The innovation. The Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley will serve as a model of innovation that can demonstrate the effectiveness of and demand for full-time online learning that districts can then replicate. The expertise. The charter has the ability to work with the nation's leading provider in online learning, K-12, who has 12 years of best practices in online education. The Illinois Virtual Charter School will be 100% dedicated to online students. A cost savings. Charter schools operate at a cost savings to taxpayers. Nationwide, on average, charter schools are funded at $6,585 per pupil compared to $10,771 per pupil at conventional districts. Charter schools are public schools. There's no cost to parents and students. They are governed by an independent board of directors. You met Ms. Jackson. The teachers are Illinois certified teachers and are also highly qualified teachers under NCLB. They all reside in the state. Students take the exact same tests in proctored settings as students in a traditional school. We have annual financial audits, annual academic reports. All of the same things that are required by the Illinois Department of Education of traditional districts are also required of charter schools and online schools. The curriculum is aligned to the Illinois state standards and the Common Core standards. We admit any student who applies. There's no discrimination or selection process. We provide full special education services and comply with IDEA and Section 504. It is a public, not a private school. It is accountable to state and federal requirements, and it creates choice in the public education system. So here are some of the laws that apply to charter schools. Many times one of the misconceptions is that charter schools operate without any oversight or accountability, and actually these are just some of the laws that apply to charter schools, as well as some of the accountability we talked about previously. The FERPA Act, Family Education Rights and Privacy, Individuals with Disability Education Improvement Act of 2004, the Illinois Educational Labor Relations Act, the Illinois Freedom of Information Act, the Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the U.S. DOE Guide on Applying Federal Civil Rights Law to Charter Schools. So our schools include all of these things. When you think about an online school, it's sort of hard to wrap your brain around at first. How exactly do you operate online, and how do you educate students? But we have teachers, and we'll talk about each of these as we go through. We have support. We have a school community. Our students receive books and materials. One of the misconceptions is that students are staring at a computer screen face-to-face every day, and that's actually not the case. We have field trips and outings. We have flexibility in our program for students, and we also have safety, both from whatever safety issues might be plaguing a student in a traditional school, as well as online safety. So one of the very important people in an online school is the learning coach, and typically this is the person who supports the student at home. Typically it's a parent. Sometimes parents get together in co-op. Sometimes it's an aunt or a grandparent or an uncle. Sometimes if the family has a nanny or a babysitter during the day, this is the person who takes on the learning coach responsibilities. So some of their responsibilities are that they log attendance, they help the student with organization and time management as well as planning. They utilize the assessments in the system. They regularly check the student's progress. They communicate with teachers and counselors on a very regular basis. And then we also listed some times that learning coaches should be spending with their student. Again, these are just guidelines because all students are individuals and they all need different amounts of time depending on their learning needs. So if you're a parent of a student in kindergarten through 5th grade, you spend 3 to 5 hours with your student supporting their education. In 6th through 8th grade, 2 to 3 hours. And for the students, they spend 4 to 6 hours a day on their coursework in grades K through 5. About 6 to 7 hours in their middle school years, and then in high school, about 6 to 9 hours. Again, just general guidelines because all students are unique individuals, and some students take more time in some subjects and some less in others. And most importantly, they're the student's head cheerleader. So what kind of support do we offer learning coaches? Maybe you're a parent who's never been a learning coach before, but this option is very interesting to you. So some of the ways that K-12 supports our learning coaches are through the Learning Coach Institute. We have a curriculum support series if families want more support in math or history or art. We have the Home and Life series. If you're a parent of students who have, you have multiple students in the online school, we have things called Schooling a Small Army at Home. And so you actually get to learn from other parents how to be successful in your learning coach role, balancing that also with all the things that you need to do at home. We have Learning Coach Live, so live chat with another learning coach. We have mentor circles, so veteran learning coaches working with brand new learning coaches. We have booster programs in our schools, roundtable discussions, and these topics change on a weekly and monthly basis. And then a quarterly newsletter called the X Potential. So one of the really interesting things is that in virtual school, families don't come and traditionally stay as long as students stay in a traditional brick and mortar school. So we ask our families when they come in, how long do they plan on staying in the school? And so you can see there in blue, 29.9% of the families told us they were going to stay 1 year or less. 23% said they would stay for 2 years, 12.6% for 3 years, and 34.4% more than 3 years. And then folks who said, I don't know, were not included in this, but it was about 30%. So it's a different mindset when families come in because students come to virtual schools or online schools for different reasons. So the ILVCS staff, the Illinois Virtual Charter School staff, will be an impressive team of professional educators. 100% will hold valid Illinois teaching credentials. 100% will meet the definition of highly qualified according to No Child Left Behind. And we truly believe that a collaborative relationship between families and their assigned teachers is at the heart of a positive learning environment. I was looking at your vision up here, and I thought, oh, okay, there's a match. So let's get into some more specifics about teacher licensure. Again, appropriate Illinois certification for all teachers in their grade and content level areas. Teachers will live and work in Illinois with a preference for teachers based in the Fox River Valley area. And teachers receive 50 hours of initial professional development as well as ongoing training throughout the year. So when teachers graduate from teacher college, as I did back in the horse and buggy days, we went into our first classroom and we pretty much knew what we needed to do. We had a mentor teacher, but going to work in an online school is a little bit different. You still need all of the pedagogical techniques that you have coming out of college, but you have to do things a little bit differently and you do it within different systems. And so we provide what's called virtual national teacher training to our teachers. And then we also have multiple systems where teachers are trained throughout the year. It's called National Professional Development. So not only would the Illinois Virtual Charter School provide professional development, but also K-12 provides that to teachers. So what are the expectations for our teachers? Again, that they're certified and highly qualified in their subject area, and they are specialists in that area. That they have a proven track record with data analysis. We do not teach large groups of students. What we're really focused on is data analysis and filling in gaps for students where they're missing things and also enriching them where they need those enrichments. So we look at student data a lot, and that's what drives the instruction from the teachers in small groups and in one-on-one sessions. So they provide differentiation and intervention. They manage the pace of the course, especially in high school. They conduct office hours in Blackboard Collaborate. It's called Live Help for students, and then also high school students have live threaded discussions. They support the learning coaches and the students. So if a student needs help with something that they're working on, they can help the student. But also a learning coach can contact the teacher and say, I would really like to learn another way to teach my student this. And so they talk with the teacher about that, and the teacher provides support to them as well. They grade student work and provide feedback through work samples and teacher-graded assignments. They conference with students and their mentors, and that's what we call the learning coach at the high school level, the mentor, as needed. And they're also a resource for curriculum questions and supplemental activities. So this actually talks a little bit about some of the training and professional development that we provide to teachers. They get training in the K-12 curriculum, in online pedagogy, in instructional and intervention strategies, the use of technology in our online systems, building a school community virtually, tracking student progress, data-driven decision-making, implementing school and student improvements, special education, and also test preparation for standardized testing. So who can benefit from online schooling? And there you see quite a list of these students. Students who are struggling in their current educational setting or with a specific content area. Students who are gifted and talented. Students in our program can move at their own pace, so they can actually, if they are a student who's gifted and talented, move more quickly through the curriculum and also dive deeper into the curriculum. Advanced learners, so students who may not be truly gifted, but they are high achievers in areas. Students with special needs. We have lots of students who have special needs, and we, again, do not select or unselect any students. All students are welcome in our program. Students who are homebound for any medical reasons. We have students who need alternative education programs. students who are on a long-term suspension, students who have traditionally been a discipline or behavioral problem in a traditional setting, families who are highly mobile, families in the military, things like that. Parents and students who are seeking one-on-one instruction. With our model, the student gets the one-on-one with the learning coach as well as the support of the teacher. A special needs student, depending on the services in their IEP, get not only that one-on-one learning coach, their general education teacher, but also their special education teacher, as well as any related services. And then also students who are grappling with social or discipline issues in their current setting. So what are some of the expectations for our students? That they log into the online school or the learning management system daily. They check K-mail, which is our internal email documentation system, and daily announcements. They attend their Class Connect sessions. If you've ever been to a webinar or a WebEx, that's a lot of how we work with students is in that environment. It's a kid-friendly tool called Blackboard Collaborate. They work in every class, every day. They provide work samples to their teachers. They communicate regularly with their teachers. They master 100% of the Study Island lessons. They complete Scantron, which is a performance series growth measure that we utilize to measure student growth. The ISATs, the ACT, the PSAE testing, and anything else that is required here in Illinois. And then again, students spend about 6 hours a day working in their grade level at K to 5, 6 to 7 hours in middle school, and anywhere from 6 to 9 in high school. Again, just general guidelines depending on your student. One of the things that I want to point out is the K-12 academic report for 2013. This is available on our site at www.k12.com. It's a very comprehensive report that lists all of our schools across the country, including our private schools, and gives data and information on those schools. I'm going to share a little bit of data with you today, but it's a very comprehensive report, and so if it's something that you're interested in doing for your late night reading, I would certainly encourage you to pull that up online and take a look at it. So this is one of our schools, and this is their Scantron growth measure. And Scantron, as I told you, is a growth measure that we use. Students who come to online schools typically come in very far behind, at least a year to 3 years behind in maybe one area, maybe more, because they were struggling and were not being successful in their previous setting, whatever that was. And so for us to take a look at them on a state test in the very first year and to say that they're proficient is not a very good measure of that student. What we do expect to see, though, is growth from our students. So when they test in the fall to the spring, that we have good growth measures. And Scantron is the way that we do this. Students test in the fall and they test again in the spring. And so what you'll see here actually is the mean school gain in the blue bar. And so that's the average school gain for each of the grade levels, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in reading. This was for last year. And then the black line going across is actually the national norm group. So all the students across the nation who take Scantron. And you can see that we outperform those students in the national norm group in reading. And I'll let you take a look at math. Clearly something was happening with our 6th graders in this school. So one of the things that K-12 recognizes, as you do almost does every school and district across the nation, is that we have a math crisis. And so we wanted to figure out, what do we do to help kids with math? Because it is at a critical state at this point. So one of the things that we came together and developed was called the National Math Lab, and we actually piloted this in its first year. And as you take a look across the bottom of this graph, this is actually great. Starts at grade 10 and goes 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And we had in the blue bar the control group, so students that we did not allow to come into National Math Lab in the first year pilot, and then in red, or the maroon color, the students who received National Math Lab. And National Math Lab is 1 hour every day, and it's very data-driven instruction to fill holes exactly where those students are. Students who are only 3 years behind or more are the students who get into this, so they're at a severe loss in mathematics. And this is actually, the orange bar is actually their Scantron, the norm group across the nation, the gain. And so you can actually see how far our students outperformed that norm group who went to the National Math Lab. So this is actually very promising to us, especially in grades 9 and 10, because typically we don't see much growth out of high school students at that level. But this is something that is working incredibly well. So it's something we're very proud of, and this year is its 2nd year and is no longer in pilot status. So any student who needs to get into National Math Lab does. So accountability for the Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley. Again, we follow all state testing requirements in proctored settings. We have the frequent use of additional testing, DIBELS, so the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills for students in grades K through 3. Again, Scantron, and then we have lesson and unit assessments as well as end-of-course assessments in the online school. Even our second graders take end-of-course assessments, so they're responsible to make sure that they have maintained and retained all of that information. We have the National Instructional Model, and this is actually something that was developed at K-12, and it's how to do what we do, a research-based method of instruction in the online school. We have all of the state reports to the Board of Directors, the authorizing entity, so whoever is the authorizer of this school obviously will have input and accountability features that the school will comply with. No Child Left Behind, so NCLB and AYP goals, as well as individualized learning plans. Individualized learning plans are not individualized education plans as we have for students with special needs, but every single student who comes into our school gets an individualized learning plan. And this lays out goals on a monthly basis for each student and tracks the data longitudinally for them. And so the teacher meets with the parent and they develop the goals together that they want to see happen in the next month. So the K-12 educational program is specifically designed for K-12 online delivery. It's based on decades of education research and cognitive science. It has more than 185 online courses, more than 21,000 individual lessons. It incorporates very innovative and engaging technologies for students. There are more than 100,000 multimedia components, virtual field trips, game simulations, avatars, concept maps, threaded online discussion groups, interactive science labs, video lectures, online debates, and discovery streaming video. We also have integrated textbooks and hands-on materials. Remember that I told you one of the misconceptions when folks think about students in a virtual school is that students sit face-to-face with a computer screen all day, and that's actually not the case. The students use that, and I'll show you the weekly plan that they use, and they jump into their lesson and might have a skills update, and then they get out their books and their hands-on materials, whether that be an art class for clay or an art studio, or they get out their base 10 blocks or whatever it is that they might be using for math, their literature books, all of those things. So hands-on is a very big part of what we do in online school as well. We also have full wet labs for a richer learning experience. So our students have the ability, and our schools have the ability to take virtual labs through science, or they can actually have the actual labs through science. And not only do I work for K-12, but my daughters, all 3 of my daughters, actually who are in 5th grade, 2nd grade, and kindergarten go there. And we have hands-on labs at our house. And so when I come home, there are seeds hanging in the windows and things growing in jars and beakers and graduated cylinders all over the kitchen. So all of those things are included in the online school. And assessments, we have lesson unit and end-of-course assessments, and then both teacher and computer graded. So not only do students just take assessments in the computer, but they also have, as I said earlier, work samples that they turn into the teacher for teacher-graded content. Students receive the K-12 online curriculum and planning and progress tools, books, materials, manipulatives, and supplies. We call it Christmas in July because the UPS man stops at your house and delivers boxes upon boxes upon boxes of materials for your student. Computers, monitors, and printers as needed, internet reimbursement, access to an Illinois certified teacher, administrator, and special services, and access to group outings, academic workshops, and enrichment activities. So I want to go through quickly the K-8 overview so you can see what the system looks like. So this is actually my daughter's page, so I don't have a FERPA violation, because remember I told you that we follow all of those laws. So this is actually my husband's page when he logs in as her learning coach, and he sees my oldest daughter, Annie. And you can see she has hyperlinks to all of her lessons. She has quick links into the Big Think, the family directory, contacting the teachers directly. Right to Study Island, it links. Down the left-hand side, there are multiple things and announcements in there. Teachers can create announcements. But those are places where you'll find those speaker series for learning coaches and all of the supports that we talked about earlier. You also see attendance and advanced prep. This is what the student's weekly plan looks like. So the student can look on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday and see all of the lessons that they will be working on in those days. And so on Monday morning, they log in, pull up their weekly plan, click on Math Plus Purple, and away they go. It takes them right to the lesson that they are working on. But again, students can click all over the plan. If you'd like to block your schedule and work on just math and language arts for the first 2 days, you can do that. If you want to work on history and language arts for the other 2 days, you can do that. So the plan is very flexible and it moves with you. This is actually what it looks like when students are making progress through the curriculum. It's a mastery-based system, so students must reach 80% mastery to move on to the next lesson. There are objectives given at the beginning of every lesson, and the assessment then covers those objectives at the end. And so you can see in this snapshot here that in Math Plus Red, Annie had completed 15% of the curriculum. She had mastered it, and she had 85% left to go. This system also allows us to calculate for students the end date. So if you decide as a family that you would like to be done with school 2 weeks early at the end of the year, you just recalculate, and your plan will actually put the amount of lessons on that you need to have. So it's a very interactive system. And then this is actually part of the student accountability. Lots of times one of the misconceptions that we hear is that, oh, it's so easy for students to cheat in online school. And it's actually not. It's not any easier for them to cheat than it would be in a brick and mortar setting or traditional setting for school. As you can see, it tells us what the lesson is on the left-hand side, if it has an assessment or not, or a lesson checkpoint, what the score was, how many times the student took it. It also tells us the time that a student took it. So if we see that a student logged in at 8 a.m. and they took a test and they got a 0 on it, and they logged in again at 8:01 and took the test and got 100 on it, we can absolutely tell that something is wrong. So we can lock down their curriculum, go in and unclick that lesson. The teacher can pull them right into a web-based classroom and Blackboard Collaborate and test them on that content. So we can see very, very easily if something is not as it should be in the system. So the high school, so you can get a quick peek at what the high school looks like. So this is the learning management system in high school. And as you can see there, the list of the students' courses that the student is taking, their course average. It talks to us a lot about what's happening, and I'll show you the dashboard in just a second. So let's say that the student clicked right into their Algebra 1 course. This is what they see. And if you've ever taken an online college course, this looks very, very similar to that. Students can click into their syllabus, their calendar, contact their teacher. They can move through the modules as they need to. High school is less flexible because they are on a credit-bearing system and they must complete work within a semester. But their day is flexible because they can work whenever they would like to work. Tests and quizzes are locked down, so they can move throughout the modules, but they cannot take tests or quizzes without their teacher's knowledge. So this is one of the ways that we help keep our students organized. They have to-do lists, things they've already submitted, things that have been graded, and things that are incomplete. This is what the grade book looks like for students. What you see over on the right-hand side also is the user activity. So sometimes parents call and go, you know, Johnny studied for that test, and I don't know why he didn't pass it. And we pop open the user activity and we say, because he spent 2 minutes in that lesson. So that could be the problem. We can also see in that user activity if they logged into that course and went somewhere else online for a while. So the system gives us a lot of visibility into what our students are doing to make sure that they're staying on task and engaged. This is the student dashboard, so you can see all the student work, the discussions that they have pending or that they've worked in, their Dropbox, which is where they put in their assignments, and then also their current grades in those classes. So additional programs. We have, as I said earlier, programs for students with special education needs, and that runs the gamut for every disability. English language learners, so any students, again, are welcome to our program. Gifted and Talented, Title I, National Honor Society. We have science fairs, quiz bowls, spelling bees, geography bees, field trips, student clubs, and graduation ceremonies, as well as prom. These are just some pictures from one of our school of their field trips. Each of the teachers at this school is actually required to do a field trip per month. And the great thing is that they're located all over the state, so there are opportunities to travel to go to field trips for students, and almost no field trips are grade level specific. Sometimes we do a special field trip maybe to Stratford in Canada for high school students. But even if you're a second grade teacher, your field trip is open to the entire school, so entire families come on field trips. And then these are just some of the K-12 national clubs that are available nationally, and these go right into the student's plan. So if the student says, I would like to sign up for the sports club, they actually click that they would like to attend that, and it falls right into their daily plan. So anytime their teacher is holding a Class Connect session, it goes right into their plan. They just click and go right into that class. And then each of our schools also has local clubs. These are some of the summer camps that we had for our elementary students last year. And I know water safety sort of jumped out at me at first. I said, wow, how do you do that online? But it was actually a great summer camp. These things, again, are all optional for students who want to take part in these. And then some of the national events. Every year we do the Winter Wonderland of Gingerbread. And so all of our schools, the students create gingerbread houses. Again, an optional activity, but they create gingerbread houses and write essays. And then the schools pair with K-12 and do a skating event or crafts or something that's winter related for that. So you can see some pictures from Winter Wonderland of Gingerbread. And then K-12 Operation Lemonade works with Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation to create lemonade stands at all of our schools, and all of the money goes to pediatric cancer research. So it's a national effort that we have with that. And then we also have national spelling bees. So all of our schools have spelling bees, and then the teachers actually go to the students and proctor those, and they go to the region, and then they go nationally to win those spelling bees. So ILVCS at Fox River Valley intends to contract with K-12 to provide curriculum and services for the Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley. K-12, again, provides curriculum and administrative services to over 2,000 school districts and charter schools, including 2 charter schools in Illinois. The Chicago Virtual Charter School was the city's first public online charter school, and it was named one of Chicago's best high schools in Chicago Magazine in September 2012. Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley has corporate accreditation from Advanced Ed. K-12 has corporate accreditation from Advanced Ed. The organization, which is made up of the North Central Association Commission and on accreditation and school improvement. And then all of our schools, obviously, are accredited regionally based on where they are. So let's talk about the financial impact, because I know certainly that is on your minds. Enrollment trends for online schools in other states indicate that approximately 0.25% to 0.5% of a district's enrollment are interested in enrolling in a full-time online school. I believe here in DeKalb we had 110 folks who raised their hand and said that they were interested in this. But you can see the district enrollment and about the number of potential students that would attend the Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley. So the Illinois statute currently allows for the level of funding to be negotiated with the authorizer at a range of 75 to 125% of the district's per capita student tuition. And again, that will be negotiated in the contract. Illinois Virtual Charter School at Fox River Valley has a projected funding level of $8,000 per student. Year 1 projections are that 0.25% of students will be candidates for enrollment in the program. This equates to 1 in 500 currently enrolled in the public schools in the Fox River Valley. $8,000 is approximately 84% of the average per capita student tuition in the 18 districts identified in the charter application. And that amount, again, is subject to negotiation based on the contract. Certainly we don't have students yet, and so we don't know what enrollment will be, and nor do we know about the negotiations. So that was a lot of information very quickly, but I definitely want to turn it over to the board for questions.
I've got, I apologize. Could we go back and look at 2 slides?
Absolutely.
The 2 slides that showed elementary math and reading performance on Scan Time Achievement.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I apologize if I just
No, please don't.
Okay.
Sure.
So I assume this data are from K-12 because Illinois Virtual Charter School is not yet.
Correct. This is actually one of the schools in K-12.
One of the schools?
Just one of the schools.
Okay.
Yes.
Out of the more than 2,000 schools that are in K-12?
Right.
Okay, the sample sizes you've got there, they're awful small.
They are.
I mean, statistically, it wouldn't even consider to be, robust samples at all.
Sure. So one of the things, and this is actually from our school in Michigan, actually where I was the head of school. I'm currently the acting head of school there, but that's why I pointed out the K-12 academic report, because I want you to have the full information, and this has information on Scantron and graphs that look just like this, based on every single school within K-12.
Okay, so this is one individual school.
Correct.
Out of the 2,000 schools.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So then do you have a national average of that?
I think it's in the K-12 academic reports, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
So it's in the academic report that she was saying that's online.
I realize that.
Dr. Muller, do you and your administration staff have some other questions?
Well, I didn't know if they wanted to address questions specific to this presentation or the actual proposal that we received? Because we do have questions with regards to the proposal, but I assume the question regarding the presentation would be finished first. So,
Okay.
but we're ready to move forward at any time.
Look to the board first. Do you have any specific questions? I guess I could start off. Mikey, go ahead.
Well, I have a number of them, so
Shoot.
however you want to proceed. With regard to your technical support, do you then shift the students to computers? Or if a computer fails, what is your technical support like? And or how long would the student have to wait for a replacement computer?
Great question. So we have on our homepage that you call actually K-12, and you punch through to technical support, and they have someone there to help you, so they'll diagnose what the issue is, and then they will address it right then if they can by remoting into your computer, or sometimes they have to send parents a disk, or they might say, you know what, it's a problem, we need to send an entirely new computer. So that would take, you know, standard 2 to 3 day shipping. So students can still work at a library or anywhere they have an internet connection, if they have a family member with a computer, those kinds of things. They still do have all of their hands-on materials to work on in the meantime.
So the average then is 3 days?
It would be 2 to 3 days if they needed a new computer, but in many cases they don't, they can repair it.
And then how is that time made up per se? So if it's 3 days without instruction, then how do you proceed to make up those days?
So students can still work in their hands-on materials based on that information. The teacher would take screenshots and can send information to the family or talk to the mom on the phone or the learning coach on the phone and talk to them about how they need to proceed in those days. But remember that the schedule is flexible, so they can just add lessons as they need to. Those lessons won't go away. They'll just pop over to the next day on that weekly plan. So yes, it would be like if a student missed traditional school and they would have to make up some time, but they will have done the hands-on lessons that were not online. So they would have part of it done.
And different subject with regard to social development. Certainly the working world is reliant upon our students being educated to work with others. How does K-12 promote that social development and the ability to work with others in teams, for example?
Sure, absolutely. So our students, I'm sorry, I just dropped all my papers here. Our students actually go to one of the classes that they go to every week is homeroom, and so they work with students all the time in their grade level and across grade levels at the high school level. And then they also, teachers have the ability within the Class Connect classroom to put them into breakout rooms, and students get their own whiteboards and materials and whatever they need to work and partner up. So besides the social outings and those kinds of things, they get all of their interaction with the online classrooms and things like that. But one of the things that you find really interesting with students who attend school is that people think they're not socialized, and actually they're incredible children who are very well socialized. So it's things that the families are doing at home. They put students in 4-H and scouting and all of the extra things that they do with their families. So it's more than just school socialization.
So then there are cameras on both ends, per se? Okay.
Absolutely.
And with regard to the outings and the field trips, how do students get there? How do students get to go on those field trips?
So typically parent transport, unless it's a big field trip like I talked about with the high school students, which we would take buses for. If families don't have the money to attend, we make sure that they can attend, whether it's giving them a gas card when they arrive, or carpooling, or having them set up something with another family. But we don't keep any students away from field trips because they can't afford to attend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tracy?
I have several as well, but I think what I'd like to do, because I know you have lots to cover, is help me understand the money flow. So your company is a not-for-profit, correct?
Yes, it is.
But you have partnered with K-12, who is for-profit?
We are.
Yes.
Okay, so, and is K-12 publicly traded or privately
We are.
held?
We're publicly traded.
Okay. And I see a guesstimate there roughly of $8,000 per student. And I'm struggling with that because, yes, you're right, we're at a higher level to do that, you know, to educate a student on an annual basis. But we feed over half our children breakfast. We feed all of our children lunch, those that want it. We transport them. We supply them extracurriculars. We supply them orchestras and bands. And plus we do the 4-H and other things you talked about after we're done with that. So I'm wondering why $8,000? I mean, looks to me like that's pretty pricey when you have gotten somebody's educational coach to donate their time, because you're not reimbursing them, correct?
Remember,
The
they have a
educational
teacher.
coach?
They do have a teacher, right, and all the
Okay,
online
but,
curriculum and tools.
all right, but the educational coach who is to spend roughly 6 to 9 hours a day at certain levels is not reimbursed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And we also spend a lot of our time trying to professionally develop teachers, trying to make sure we have the best teachers in front of the students. How do you do that with an education or an instructional coach that?
A great question. So one of the things that we require of students who come in academically at risk is that not only those students attend all live sessions, but also their learning coaches attend sessions. So let me give you an example of one of the things that we do. So our authorizer, and one of our authorizers in Michigan, actually they have literacy coaches that work with teachers in all of their charter schools, and so we actually had them develop online programs specifically for learning coaches. So not only as part of the K-12 learning support, right, the support for learning coaches dealing with curriculum and how to do those things better, but also we will hire out people who will develop the learning coaches with professional development. So parents can log on to a session. So we just actually did a series on literacy workshop development. And so they actually went through all of the evidence-based literacy instruction as a learning coach.
Well, I'm going to be very, I'm sorry.
Can I follow up? I know I'm
Yeah,
in the middle
please.
here. You're talking about the education for the learning coaches.
Mm-hmm.
How many professional development hours do they get?
It just depends on the family, and if they want to attend. Certainly we don't, as a school, offer those as many hours as we do for teachers. Again, teachers have other portals like K12training.com and Skillport and other things like that. So learning coaches is just what the learning coach support is at K12, the speaker series, the roundtables, the curriculum and home life series, and then whatever the school offers, but those are all optional to parents except for if the student is academically at risk.
So we could have a learning coach that has a few hours of professional development trying to basically be a teacher, which is normally a 4-year curriculum.
But remember, the student has a teacher, so this is their learning coach.
And what's
So
the
this is
teacher-to-student ratio?
It depends on the grade level, but generally 60-1. But you have to remember, which sounds high, right? It makes you go, but remember that they're not sitting at a desk in front of you with all 60 students. Remember that we work on data analysis and data-driven instruction with small groups and individuals.
Because they're being taught by the learning coach,
The learning coach is their primary teacher.
which is the one that doesn't have the education.
And that's their parent.
Okay.
Typically a parent, not always.
All right. Thank you, Tracy.
No problem. Well, I mean, I'm going to be very candid with you. I mean, I'm very suspect. It's easy to put together a PowerPoint that shows all the wonderful things, especially when you cherry pick a school in Michigan that has all these results. If you were doing that across the board, I'm not sure why we're all here. I mean, it seems to me you've found the answer to all of our education issues. If you could do that across the nation, then everything we work toward and work for has been solved.
Okay.
But you cherry picked one particular school. I can go through this district and find the right class at the right school, and I can make that one look silly. So the problem with these types of PowerPoints is there's very little credibility most of the time. Doug knew which question to ask better than I would. But the whole time I was looking at it, I was going, this doesn't even sound right. $8,000 to send a kid a computer and have a 60-1 teacher-to-student ratio? I mean, what you've done is you've asked parents, mostly, to educate their children, and you're going to give them a tool from which to do that. I wonder, if you have a student that's a fabulous trumpet player, are we to, who chooses your program, are we to welcome them then into our music program? Are we to welcome athletes into our athletic programs? If you take $8,000 for this, we won't have the funding to provide those programs for those students. So what would be our responsibility to those students that enter this program? And if they fail miserably in your program, are we obligated then to take them back and try and correct it? Because I'm sure you have some instances like that, regardless of whose fault it is. And I also read today that you're being asked to shut down your special ed program in Georgia. Did I interpret that correctly? This is K-12. This isn't aimed at your organization.
You want me to address the special education
Please.
in Georgia? Absolutely. So there was actually a report in the paper that special education was not happening as it should have been, and actually the Georgia Department of Education assigned folks to Georgia Cyber Academy to look at those things, and found that actually they had exemplary practices, and that is not true. They do have exemplary practices for their special needs students, and it was completely unfounded.
So that the letter that was attached to that newspaper article from the Georgia Board of Education, or whoever it was, to you folks, has been rescinded?
I don't know, I do not know if it's been rescinded, but I know that the Georgia Cyber Academy was assigned folks from the Georgia State Department of Education, and none of the things were found to have merit.
Okay,
Do you have a question?
please.
Do you have a question?
When you were looking at, and you showed a list of typical students that come there, can you please tell me what demographics, because it sounds like a myriad, because you said they're very high, performing students, but then you also said students with at risk or who have had alternative, or have been suspended for a very long time. We're looking at very different students. If you were talking about what the learning expectations, can you walk me through, maybe you can too, I need some help understanding, say for instance a student who is dealing with emotional disorders, and if they're only in that home-based program, how are we socializing them? There's other routines, from my understanding, I don't know if there's any special education majors in here, but there's other things that need to be done. That's why we have community trips, that's the reason why we teach those strategies. Can you walk me through how that happens?
Sure, so a student with special needs, if they were emotionally handicapped or emotionally impaired, that came into our program, whatever services are listed on their IEP, obviously some of the IEP items will change, modifications and accommodations will change based on the virtual setting, because some things are no longer needed that were needed in the face-to-face setting. So we will with our special education team, have that IEP, they get all of the related services that they need, and in most cases for a student with emotional impairments, they would have a social worker or functional behavioral assessment with a psychiatrist or whatever services that they needed. So they would have their learning coach, they would have their special education teacher, their general education teacher, and then any related service providers that their IEP designated.
Online?
It depends, sometimes they're face-to-face and sometimes online, it just depends on the service. Most speech and language we do online, some OT online, other services like PT obviously are face-to-face, and some of the social work is either online or face-to-face, depends on the student and the amount of students' progress toward their goals and their IEP.
Okay, also when we're looking at the demographics, I'm just going based on research. When we're talking about students who are low performing or dealing with those behavioral issues, unfortunately as we talk about achievement gaps, we are talking about low income. What if this is an option for them? What if they don't have that, learning coach? Where do they get that from? Do you supply that person to come to their home?
Right, so one of the things that's very important to remember is that education in an online setting is not for every student. So a learning coach is a critical role that needs to be filled, and that's obviously a family responsibility. It's not provided by K-12 or by the board or by the school. So sometimes if families really want this option, maybe we'll talk to them about, is there an aunt or an uncle, is there a neighbor, is there another parent in the area who's doing it who might be willing to co-op with you. So certainly we would try to support them as best we could, but that learning coach role is critical to their success in the program.
But I can tell you, for instance, in Chicago,
Yes.
6 years ago in 2006, so we just didn't, I've done my homework on this, right, my research. In Chicago Public Schools, I was a chief e-learning officer. We were looking for expanding some learning opportunities for our underserved population of students, right? Some of which even happened to be homeless at the time.
Right.
Some kids who had phobias, some who were hospital bound, some whose needs had not been met in the public schools, to be honest with you. And so there were big challenges. I had a big concern about K-12 at that time because I was like, wait a minute. If this is online and these kids have been failed, have not had success in public schools, what could an online school do for them? Well, I actually took a trip. Before I took a trip, I did my research on every online provider out there. I looked at their systems. First of all, the process, their management, their administration, their systems, and most of all, I looked at their special education. Teachers, coaches, the whole gamut. To make sure that my recommendation to say that this would be a viable means is something that has been proven. So I took a trip and I went to their facility, more than just looking at their academic reports and the things that they wanted to show me, like what you've seen. I actually went and delved right into everything that I could possibly see firsthand myself, to sites. I talked with the teachers, and what ended up happening, I came back to Chicago and made a recommendation. And the recommendation was, I was just pretty much, excuse me, I was appalled at some of the situations in public schools. Not to say that I was born and raised in Chicago.
Well, I don't take it personally, believe me.
Okay, I'm a public school educator. I've attended all public schools myself. So I'm not one to say the public schools are not good, okay? Then to bash them and say there's another way, of course. But we need to meet the needs of every child, because some children were being left behind. And what ended up happening, I came back and made the recommendation that if we were going to have this virtual school, that it needs to be blended. And you know what that means, that there's an offline and online component, so that these children who were behind, we could actually ensure that they were going to be tutored, that there were going to be some on-site, that they would actually come to a facility and actually get the face-to-face support that they needed. And so that was part of the proposal in Chicago, is that it needs to be blended. So with that said, I went back and I actually looked at the curriculum and the means and the adaptive systems, their systems, right? And at that time, I was pretty much had been working with NASA on learning management systems probably years before that, starting in '96. I'm part of a fellowship with NASA and whatever. You don't need to know all of that. But what you do need to know is that I know what I'm looking for. I know what it means to have blended, and I know rigorous content. In other words, a rigorous curriculum that is based on the standards and the assessments that are assessments for learning, right? So assessment for learning is really important. Not assessing them after the fact and saying, okay, this is where they are at, but the kind of assessment that's going to actually improve the teaching and learning to go on. And that's what I was looking for, and a system that was adaptive. So to identify where the gaps were, gives them diagnostics, pre-test, post-test, prescribes activities, and then if that activity, the student wasn't successful, the same type of activity in a different format. Then they might have virtual manipulatives, they might have hands-on manipulatives, whatever it took to make sure that that kid understood that concept. Because some teachers thought that they were teaching number sense, right? But obviously weren't. So how are you going to find that out unless that can be assessed and addressed? And so that's the kind of system I was looking for. And then a manager, someone who could do administration and management who had a track record of success, because that's really important also. So I recommended K-12. That was in 2006. It was a K-12 schools at that time. First one of its kind in Chicago, right? They are now one of the top 15 schools in Chicago. But that takes governance. Just like you're a board and you govern the schools in your districts, that is all about governance and how you govern and have a provider that actually administers, manages, and provides the curriculum. So I want to give you this misnomer about, well, this is this for-profit company. Yeah, well, within school districts, we purchase a lot of for-profit company materials and services. So this company is no different, right? But let me come back to you. The thing is that you think that it's like a canned curriculum. Well, if you look at the curriculum, there's like so many providers that their systems are integrated into the K-12 management system. So not only do we have the assessments, we have multiple best-of-breed solutions that are integrated into the system that addresses Common Core and the new assessments coming down the line. So that system is already in place. That's very difficult to purchase and pull together for school districts, because I was with Chicago and I work with other school districts right now. I was retired with 35 years. I was the chief e-learning officer. And I currently work in consulting work with school districts, and I know how difficult it is to do that, especially on the budgets that we have, right? So bottom line is, I looked at all of those particular needs, but I specifically looked at the type of teaching and learning that it was going to take to actually help every individual new student achieve. And having an individualized learning plan was one of them, one of the pieces. And the other part was, what I found out is that on the high school end of things, that we had some virtual learning courses that were supplementary, but guess what? They weren't accredited. So what does that mean? The students are wasting their time for the most part. And I looked at other providers all over the nation to identify who had the accreditation for the high school courses. They were one of few. Amazed. I was really surprised because, you know, you just think it's college board approved and they've got the accreditation. You just assume that since they're offering these courses, they have to be. No. So we looked at the full gamut, the depth and the breadth. And so my recommendation, and the school is operating well, but it does take governance, management, and it does take the right mix. All schools are not created equal, right? So it needs to be customized to the needs of those particular students. Most of the students who come into the school are low, right? Low achieving students. And that is something that K-12 specializes in at this point. So they get them 2 and 3 and more years behind. It takes them at least after the first year to try to pull them up. It's not going to happen instantaneously, right? If they're behind for 3 years, the system is not going to be able to just adapt and get them up to par immediately, along with the learning coach, who is the parent, and the online teacher, and the special education teacher, and the paraprofessional, and whoever's working with them. That takes time. Does that answer your question?
It does. I mean, I like you said, the authorizers and the governors can talk about a blended program, you know, giving us some power and some governance to talk about. It doesn't have to be set up this way. We can curtail it to our demographic and what needs for our students.
Exactly.
The blended program, however, does that come with the $8,000 cost?
Yes.
So is that where the academy provides the support to the low-income people that
Yes.
who need it?
Yes. Yes.
Because I didn't pick that up in the presentation.
Right. We can't put everything in presentation.
Well, I know, but
And
even
you wouldn't have liked it
even
anyway, right?
the proposal, even the proposal.
Meaning that it would have been too long, and you know that would be get into PowerPointlessness, right? So it's better for you to ask us.
What is your graduation rate for the 2,000 schools?
So I actually don't know that. We actually don't have a measurement on that. What we look at, our high schools are very new. So what we want to look at is our students who come in with us in 9th grade and travel with us through 12th grade, based on that our students, as you saw from when the parents come in, they say they're only going to stay 1, 2, or 3 years, and especially our students at risk in high school. Typically it's about 1 year is what
Do you measure your retention rate?
We do, yes. Yep.
What is that?
So over 85% in our schools of our families say they will be coming back next year to the school. And all of those are a little bit different. You'll be able to see those in the April's academic report.
Board members, other questions? Doug?
Okay. I've got some general curriculum questions with respect to what's in the proposal. And then Jessica Stewart, our Director of Special Education, has some questions. And also we have some questions from our ENL coordinator, who could not be here, but we have the questions.
Sure, okay.
Looking at that, and obviously, again, Illinois Virtual Charter School, just off the ground, so there's no historical data, but like any institution, you know, we live and die by our standardized test score data. And even though there's no history for Illinois Virtual Charter School, going back to 2001, there's dozens and dozens of states in which K-12 has schools. And on page 10, there's a listing of dozens of those schools. But I didn't see any standardized test score data for those schools. I mean, in terms of what percentage of students are meeting and exceeding on the ISAT, what percentage are meeting and exceeding on the TSAE, because at the end of the day, that's how schools are judged. You know, taking all the qualitative factors aside. So I guess my question is, I assume that the K-12 schools have to file, because they are public schools, they still have to file report cards with the State Board of Education, is that correct?
Correct.
Excuse me. And so are these data available? Can you provide us with this information?
We can. So our school in Illinois currently is the Chicago Virtual Charter School, so we could actually provide you with that information.
Okay.
I would need to get that for you. But yes, absolutely, we can provide that for you.
And just to clarify on the state assessments, those are proctored the same way they are in Brigham Young. And that's for, obviously, there's protocols that you have to follow when administering the ISAT. I don't know if they've been kind of have some loosey-goosey way of doing that. No, it follows the same procedures, protocols
as required in brick and mortar.
Okay, my second, excuse me. Going along with that, with the current ISAT PSA and then moving forward with the park, because there are no brick and mortar schools, my question addresses who proctors these exams and ensures that special education and EL students receive the appropriate accommodations.
And so, can I also add that we are here at that? Sure, absolutely. So basically, we'll use a testing database called Testing Nirvana, and it actually maps out where all of the students live across the state, and then we actually provide on-site testing locations around the state, so that families have to drive no further than 1 hour to that. And then usually at the schools, the teachers will be the site leads, and depending on the size of the school and the staff, obviously then teachers also proctor. And in Illinois, it's allowable that you have, if you hire proctors through a substitute teacher agency or whatever, that those folks can typically proctor. It depends on the state laws there. So those are all over the state, those locations, and so the state then, the school will work with the state on testing protocols, because obviously we have different security measures that we have to put into place to get test booklets from one place to another to make sure everything is secure. So yes, those are teachers who are site leaders, and those are face-to-face with all of the state protocols.
I think you might have touched on this. On page 14, it's stated that one certified teacher will be assigned to each K-5 student. But essentially, my question is, how many K-5 students are on each teacher's caseload?
So it averages about 60.
About 60?
Mm-hmm.
And then for grades 6 to 12, it also states on that same page, students in grades 6, 8, and 9 to 12 may, I added emphasis on that word may have content-specific teachers who communicate with students by subject matter. How is it determined which of these students receive the assistance of the teacher?
So it depends on when I think it says May in there, because it depends when the school decides to start the middle school model, if you will. So our school in Michigan, for instance, the 6th graders are still in the elementary model, and then students begin specific content level 7 through 12. So they have a homeroom teacher, we go with the homeroom model, and then they have their content area teachers.
Okay. For each content area teacher, how many students do they have in their class, so to speak?
And it depends on the course. So I can give you an example.
Can you give us a range?
Yes, it would, again, depend on the course and the ability level, but the level of support needed to give to the student. So it could be 2 students in an AP course, because those might be the only students in the class taking that course, and it could be as high as 225 in an English 9 course.
So 2 to 225.
Mm-hmm. Just depends on the course and
Sure.
the student support needed.
Okay. My next question, on page 37, where it talks about, and this is a huge component of it, when you talk about,
What page are you saying?
I'm sorry, 37.
37.
It says, the school also expects parents to volunteer their time and effort on behalf of the school and to suggest, help organize, and participate in field trips, other education outings, and social events. Obviously, we find sometimes with our at-risk students, and obviously some of our low SES students who are working poor, that might not be possible. But yet, you say you admit any student who applies. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and how this would work? Because again, you say you admit any student who applies, but then the onus is still on the family to have the teaching coach.
Correct. Because remember, it's an educational option. It's something that they want for their students, so they need to make a commitment as the parent to either be the learning coach or to provide that to the student.
Okay.
So, but students, even if parents work, obviously with the flexibility of the curriculum, it's still a possibility for them. And also we would have them do things like the parent advisory committee, things like that. And parents love to actually plan field trips and outings and have other families, so those kinds of opportunities for them.
Okay, because it just seems to me for some students who may have single parent families, this might in itself sort of preclude them from being able to participate.
We have lots of single parent families in our schools.
Okay. Also, can you tell us a little bit more about, you've got these expectations for parents. What happens if the parent does not meet those expectations, if they're not spending the 4 to 6 hours per day at the elementary level? How do you address that?
So obviously through our tools, and obviously the teachers work with the students very closely, so they'll know how much the parent is engaged or not engaged in the process.
Okay.
And some students are obviously more independent. If it's a middle school student, sometimes they definitely need less learning coach time. But again, it depends. So we would conference with the parent and say, these are the things that, we have a compact that they sign when they come in so that they understand the clear expectations
Parent
of
compact
the
at
program.
school?
So they understand what the clear expectations are and their roles and responsibilities in the program. And when those things are not being met, obviously the goal is never to hurt a student's education. So we need to make sure that we support them at every level of the process. And if it's something that's not working for them, certainly in the end, it's always the parent's choice, how and when they educate their student. But we have to counsel them and support them in what they need.
But essentially, and I don't mean to belabor this, but if they can't find a learning coach, they can't be a part of the Illinois Virtual Charter School. Is that correct?
Yes, in essence.
Okay.
And that's a very critical piece of the program.
Absolutely. Regarding the overall curriculum that's mentioned on page 11, it references science as one of the content areas where you offer both basically core comprehensive honors or advanced placement classes in a variety of subjects, including science. And then on pages 55 to 58, you give the course descriptors for high school biology, chemistry, and physics at each of those levels. Most of these descriptors state that students will be engaged in either hands-on laboratory experiments students can conduct at home or virtual laboratories. Can you give us a sense of how these, I know you talk about your own children, but at the high school level, when you're talking about high school physics, chemistry, and biology, or AP, running those classes, how can this be met with hands-on laboratory experiments conducted at home by the student, or through these, I understand the idea of virtual laboratories. They're basically, I mean, because you can't have them send a whole bunch of toxic chemicals to have them work on those. But can you talk a little bit more about how those are operationalized?
Sure, not the virtual lab, but the hands-on?
Both the hands-on
Okay.
and then more the hands-on I'm concerned about.
Okay, so kit-free or kitted science, if you will.
Okay.
So the board makes the decision with K-12, yes, we would like virtual lab sciences for our students, and we would like the traditional labs. So all the materials are sent to the student, and they have all of the same things, the safety things, the goggles, the microscopes, the petri dishes, all of those things that they'll be needing. One of the things that you'll find, especially in high school courses, is that teachers will actually be online and work with students through the labs, especially those labs that they know are difficult or have difficult components, and go through those with the students. So they'll have the camera or document camera on those materials and be able to show everything.
Okay.
I got a question on that. Are they working with them one-on-one? So that when they're trying to do a biology and they're dissecting a frog, are they doing that one-on-one with the person there?
They have a small group, because the teacher would have the camera on whatever she was doing, and then the student can actually flip on their camera. They can see multiple student cameras at the same time.
You don't have students at home dissecting frogs?
We do not have dissect.
It's virtual.
That's virtual dissection, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we don't deliver any frogs or anything like that.
or scalpels.
No.
That's my general question. Justice got some related to special education.
Yeah, I do. Could you describe a little bit the childhood process for special education?
Sure, absolutely. So when a parent enrolls, that's one of the questions that we ask if they've ever had an IEP or if they have a disability. And so then if that happens, then the enrollment coach or PAL, that we call them, the personal admissions liaison, actually will send them over to the special education enrollment team, and there they will do deeper inquiries because that's what they specialize in is special education. We also have the RTI process in all of our schools, so that's one of the ways that we work with students who may already have a disability. We might push them right for evaluation, or we pull them through the RTI process if necessary. So,
Can you explain the RTO process just a little bit?
sure, absolutely. So typically it depends on the student, 3 6-week windows of time. And so in the first one, the teacher will fill out the referral form with the parent, and we'll talk about all of the academic concerns, social emotional concerns, medical or health related concerns. And then we go over that with the parent in an initial 1-hour meeting, and then we do an action plan. So we'll choose 2 interventions based on goals and sub skills, and then we'll put those interventions in place for 6 weeks. We meet again in 6 weeks. We also take baseline data at that point in time, and then we'll meet again in 6 weeks and go over the baseline or the new data to see if those interventions are making improvements or not. And if they are not, we might intensify, or we might say we want to develop a whole new intervention. And so we'll take another 6-week window, and if we get to the end of our 6-week windows, and nothing has prompted us previously, so we need to move right for evaluation, and nothing has helped, then we will move as a team, as an RTI team, including the learning coach and parent, to special education evaluation. But many times what we find is those more intensive interventions actually work really well for the students in the RTI process.
Is there any standard for determining the research behind any of those interventions to ensure that they are high quality, so if you meet that
Absolutely.
eligibility component for a specific learning disability?
Absolutely. So we use things like DeKalb, A to Z reading, things that are benchmarked programs, so that we're able to collect data from those interventions.
DeKalb is the assessment tool, but the actual the intervention that they're participating in.
Right. So one of the things that we use with our students is MySciLearn, if you will. That's what we use for our students who are struggling in reading. So that would be an intervention that they would do, and we would track them 30 minutes per day, 5 days a week, and watch their progress, and then give those progress monitoring along the way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Within the proposal, there was mention of the FBA and behavioral intervention plans. So how, you mentioned a little bit how those were conducted. Could you give us an example of what a plan might look like?
Sure, the FBA. So
The bit.
okay, so and you'll have to forgive me because special education is not my area of expertise, but is yours clearly. So what would happen is that in the IEP process, obviously if this is something that the team found to be necessary, or this didn't happen previously, we need to have one of those. We would send out the psychologist or the social worker or whoever was going to complete the functional behavioral assessment, and those interventions would be put in place for the student. And so we would train not only the general education classroom teacher and make sure that the special education teacher knew what those were as they were working with the student on academic goals, if they had those as well, but also the learning coach. So they were able to participate also in that functional behavior assessment because they're with that parent, with that student during the day. So.
Goodness. So the proposal indicates that students with disabilities will participate within the general program. But we really are obligated to this restricted environment. We have to have those discussions that center around setting and environment, and at least annually we have to consider 3. So can you talk a little bit about some of the different settings and environments available for students with disabilities within the program?
Sure. So obviously it's a unique program because they're one-on-one with their learning coach. So for all of our students that are all general education students, that's who they're with, is their learning coach. They also participate in homeroom sessions, which are typically larger groups, right? Could be up to 60 with the students. And then they also have small group and intervention. So I'll give you an example of some of our students who are in a functional curriculum. Actually are not doing the K-12 curriculum, but they use the unique curriculum because the K-12, either with accommodations and modifications, wasn't working well for them, so we are actually utilizing another curriculum. They still do have universal access, though, to all of the courses in the online school, so that they have that access. So it's coded sort of strangely. It's not always a resource room, and the state doesn't. Some states don't actually understand how to figure out how to code that yet in the virtual setting, because they are one-on-one, they are a small group, they have lots of different settings that they utilize. So.
And then what is the day that you use intentionally most restrictive?
It would be the IEP team meeting, obviously, and their present level statements.
And then I actually have ELL questions as well.
Okay.
So will students have access to research-based bilingual education curriculum in native language in their native language students program?
They do not. However, K-12 does not have the curriculum in other languages at this point. So if we had students who needed that service, obviously we would have a teacher, depending on the amount of students we had with English language learning needs, or we would contract out through some of our related service providing agencies who provide us speech and language pathologists, also provide us ELL teachers. So we would utilize them if we had a very small amount of students, and then we would also potentially buy curriculum that we needed to have. But currently, that's one of the things that's on K-12's list of things that they would like to accomplish in the next year, is actually providing that in other languages, but currently we do not have that.
Then how will oral proficiency be addressed? Is it interactive? And maybe the answer is at this point there's not ability to do that if there's not a bilingual person.
Not a bilingual curriculum, but the ELL teacher obviously would use a tool, and there are lots out there probably, and I don't know them off the top of my head, but they would utilize those tools to get those measurements.
And there is a real life person then providing that feedback.
Yes, it would be a virtual teacher, obviously an online teacher, but yes.
But do you know if is this software interactive?
It would depend on the program that we purchase for those students, so that would be obviously, a recommendation potentially from the school administration and the English language learning teacher to the board.
And then she just had a question about how your online curriculum addresses the achievement gap. And she was curious if you could describe a little bit more about your ELL curriculum.
Okay, so no, again, not a specific ELL curriculum, that would be something that would be purchased, but we can definitely talk about the gaps in those kinds of things, because obviously with ELL students, really we want to make sure obviously that their oral fluency is good, that they have pre-taught vocabulary, all of those things that are important for them to learn in their content area. So the ELL teacher would be responsible for those things, but one of the things that's really great about the program is that students who are behind can actually spend more time in the course. There's not sort of a bell schedule that interrupts or stops the learning at any time. So you'll see many of our students who struggle in a content area will spend twice as long. And so when you look at their attendance, they actually have twice as many minutes in that content area as they do in maybe one that they're stronger in. So they have the flexibility to stay longer and study more and do optional lessons and do more enrichment activities if they would like in that content.
And then just my last question, do you have your data broken out by those kinds of characteristics? So we kind of saw school-wide data, but really breaking that down for students with IEP, students who might be English language learners within that academic intervention.
I do not believe I believe there's demographic breakdown, but not on scores, but I'm happy to provide those to you. We have those at all the schools, obviously with all the state test data that we collect, Scantron data, so we can provide that to you if you like. Okay.
Just to follow up, for the question Jessica asked about that data, and the data I asked about your standardized test scores for whether it be Illinois, and I think it'd also be nice to see some other states, how those states perform with regards to their high stakes testing.
Sure, absolutely. And I would certainly say just remember that as you're looking at those things, remember that students come because whatever current setting they're in doesn't work well for them. And so as I mentioned during the presentation, obviously proficiency is not always a good measure, which is why we measure growth. And we really advocate for states to start doing that with students, and I think many districts do.
When would we expect to get that data? Because obviously we have to process through that and present it to the board before they can make any decisions.
Yeah, and when are you thinking about making that decision?
April 19th.
April 19th? Okay, would April 1st work for you?
April Fool's Day, it's always
Okay.
okay.
All right.
So April 1st will wait for that.
Okay.
And also, at the high school level, I assume do high school teachers teach more than one class?
Yes, but always within their content area. So you might have an English teacher who teaches, AP English and then senior level English, or ninth grade English and journalism class, whatever their certifications are.
Because my concern is that, if you've got one teacher who teaches freshman English and they've got 225 students per class, is it potential they could have 450 students?
No.
Well,
No.
Okay. So how do you balance that out?
So one of the things that we do, and especially in our larger schools, we obviously can hire many more teachers for larger student ratios, but with our schools that are small, we want to be able to offer as many courses as possible to students. So we also use what's called the K-12 Instructional Services Team. So let's say, for instance, if we have students who wanted to take Chinese and we only had 2 of them, we certainly couldn't afford to hire for the school a Chinese teacher. So we would actually contract with the Instructional Services Team, and they have teachers from all over the country, all over the world, who service students who are contracted by different K-12 schools. So they might have 2 students from here in Illinois, 3 from Pennsylvania.
But the courses you said run with larger numbers of 225 in the range.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much your basic algebra, freshman English, the required freshman, sophomore level curriculum.
Yes, potentially, but we also look at student need when we're doing those placements, and so we have Title I teachers who handle obviously more math intervention, National Math Lab, at-risk teachers. So
if you have a small, limited amount of students, it wouldn't preclude you from being able to engage in a Latin course. Let's say if you had 5 students and they want to take Latin.
Sure.
Well, you don't have to pay for a teacher's salary for the year for 5 students. Obviously, they would gather the students who are all over the country,
Absolutely.
as well as internationally, would be taking Latin, and then they would be in that course. So that is, I think, a really added value.
Thank you. I think from a curriculum and
Okay,
student services perspective.
I'm going to go look around the board here one more time before we open it up for any public comments. Any additional questions? Jessica, I'll go to Jessica first and then you to Tracy.
I'm sorry, here you go. When you were talking about the response to intervention, I know we were talking about it on the special education spectrum, but I know RTI is also in the general education system. Can you tell me what happens, say for instance, we look at, because from what I understand when you had the PowerPoint of the curriculum was, they don't pass unless they master it, which is awesome because we're looking at more of an interim assessment. But what happens if we don't see growth or we don't see sufficient growth? So obviously sufficient growth cut score would be, what, 60? They're not making sufficient growth. What do you do? And what are the interventions? Because that would be, what, a tier 2. We would start looking at what do we do? What do we do with that?
Right, so we look at a couple different things. I talked about the data analysis that our teachers are expected to do. So one of the things that we utilize is study islands. So our students are assigned pathways each week in those, and they have to complete sort of a total pathway over the course of a month. So the teacher opens up their data and says, oh my gosh, Johnny and Susie and Sally cannot count coins. They tried it, and they're not mastering that. So they'll pull them into a small group intervention, and they will do the teacher-led instruction, and then they will web push them right back out. There's a tool that's a web push, and the teacher can actually watch them go back out and work in the study island. So, as well as the tools that I talked with them about RTI, because many times it's our general education students who are academically struggling who come into the RTI process for whatever reason. So we utilize Study Island, and then also we use our Scantron Performance Series. Are you familiar with Scantron Performance Series?
No, I'm not familiar.
Okay, so Scantron Performance Series, when students take it, it's an adaptive test. So it basically maxes students out at their highest level. So if they answer incorrectly, it gets easier. If they answer correctly, it gets more difficult and challenging.
Thank you very much, I'll never back, but that's UNWEA, but yeah, Scantron Achievement Series. So literally though, they can aggregate, students all over the country, they can aggregate the data and look at it in total, as well as disaggregate it by school, by state, et cetera. Can I jump in on something, because you mentioned the mastery. Maybe I misread this, but my understanding is the mastery only does not apply to the high school.
Correct.
Okay, so what's the standard for?
The school would set the grading scale because obviously it's credit based.
So
the board,
IB, Illinois Virtual Charter School set its own
grading scale. Correct, for credits.
And if it's an authorizer, if you were the school district that would be the authorizer, we would actually be jointly making that decision together.
Okay, thank you.
The last one was for the professional development for the learning coach. Do they get any type of tools for screening, say for instance, because a lot of things happen in the classroom that we see, because I'm not familiar with virtual, such as we might see that a student may need to be screened for ADHD, or they may need to be screened for other issues that are social, emotional type of things. Do they get professional development on how to look for those things or how to screen for those things?
Right, so the parents do not. There may be things in Roundtable that I'm not aware of, or some of the other learning coach support series that I'm not aware of, but typically what you'll hear from teachers is that they know their families actually better and their students better than they actually knew them when they were in the traditional setting, and almost all of our teachers come from traditional settings into the virtual. So they're engaging with the entire family. So they know when the grandpa's sick, they know when the dog had to go to the vet, they know because they're in constant contact with that family. So they have really good conversations with the parents. And they also do this monthly ILP conferences that we talked about. And so as they're writing those goals with the families and talking about those things and looking at the students' progress together, yeah, those things come up, absolutely. Because they're also looking at longitudinal data on that same document with the student. Their Scantron scores, their state test scores, their DIBELs, all of those things.
Stephanie, I'm sorry, there was a question that I forgot that I do want to ask. You talked about the use of homeroom to meet some of the social emotional needs. Are those activities aligned with social emotional needs specifically?
No, I would say not.
Are any part of the K-12 curriculum aligned to those standards?
I'm gonna guess yes, but I can't say for sure. I can find out for you. Because I know that, yeah, it's a very developmentally based curriculum, and so I'm going to assume yes, but I will find out for you.
Tracy?
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to clarify, and I think this may say it better, but I think the issue here is not that your intentions aren't valid. Clearly, you've got experience with this in the Chicago Public Schools, and I appreciate that. And also, what I think makes a lot of sense, what a guy could get excited about is if collaboratively with a district like ours, we could offer that Latin school or that Latin course to 2 students that need it, or would like it, not need it, excuse me, but that would like it in our advanced students and or whatever, or a way to augment those that need additional help in certain areas. I get that. I think what I'm struggling with, and I haven't gone through the proposal, but but we have the people here to help me do it, is had you come to us and said, okay, we'd like to consult with your district because we can offer these things at a per course fee or for additional services, that would make it more affordable for the district than perhaps parents and families. And in this community, that's important. But to come to us as a charter school, we're now mandated by the state as to what we are to reimburse you. And our friends down the state have found a way to do this over and over and over. And if I do some very quick math, so I've heard numbers from 2 to 225, we average 60 students per teacher, and I just do some quick math based on what we know our budget to be, and I don't come up to anything that comes anywhere near 75% of what we spend to have bricks and mortars and psychologists and food and all of those things that come along with it. So I'm sensing there's a significant margin built in here. Significant. And I don't see how we can come out ahead on this. So perhaps you can help me understand it, help me understand your cost better. But if I can take a $40,000 a year teacher and dilute them down over 60 students average, we're trying to get our class sizes smaller and take out administration at that level, because you really don't have to worry about disciplinary issues or that sort of thing, and take out all the support that comes with it, and you send a computer and some workbooks. I don't see how that math comes out anywhere close to what we're talking about.
Okay, are you interested in seeing like an operating budget?
Yeah, I'd like to see a lot of stuff like that.
Okay.
Maybe a cost per student for the Chicago area, or somewhere close to us that would be a comparable sort
You
of.
want more details?
Please.
Okay, I agree.
Michael, follow up on that. You talk about the charter school is a nonprofit organization and you're working with K-12. Have you identified what that contract will be with K-12 and how much of that $8,000 goes to the school versus going to K-12 for their services?
You know, it's on the average is 8,000, but keep in mind that we haven't negotiated a contract yet at this point. So that's going to be based upon how much funding we actually do get, and then working that throughout the negotiations. So it's no different than you and your school district hiring contracting services of many vendors that you use in your district, and you negotiate that. You put RFPs out there for your scope of services and your specs and all of that, and you decide based upon that who you're going to contract services with. So it's the same thing.
I understand the process. I'm just
Right.
trying to find out what the numbers are, what percentage of the, you know, if we don't know what that's going to be, if it's going to be 8,000, 6,000, 10,000, whatever it's going to be.
We won't know that until.
What percentage of that typically in your structures, because you've got 2,000 of these schools, what percentage of these schools that you work with that I assume will be similar to what we'll do here with this particular charter school? What percentage of the total amount comes to K-12 versus staying within the school?
Please.
So typically, the management fee is 15%, and then there's a 7% technology fee.
How much?
15% is the management fee, so that includes the school administration and all of those things, and then a 7% technology fee.
7? And help me understand this correctly, and I might be wrong, maybe I misunderstood, but we have to pay somewhere between 74 or 75% and 125%, correct? So that's the negotiating range. It's not,
Right.
so we go to a book vendor who's for profit. We can negotiate that down to virtually a 1% margin for them, or go to somebody who can supply roughly the same thing at a lesser price. We can't really do that here because we have a range we have to work within. Isn't that correct?
Well, the thing is that it usually averages out to be about 84%, right? So, for instance, 100% funding. When a student comes from your district to this virtual charter, we would get approximately, I'm estimating again because we don't know the actual figures at this point, that's still to be negotiated. But on the average, it's usually 84%, which means that we don't get 100%. The 16% goes back to you. So
Okay, but we still have a floor and a ceiling from which to work. Is that
you got it.
correct?
You got it. But
Okay.
out of 100%, 16% goes back to your district.
Well, if that's where we land, or
Right.
or could
And then
cost us
84%
110%. We haven't got there yet.
We
But
haven't
we
got
have
there.
a floor and a ceiling to work with,
Right.
75 to 124%.
You got it.
Okay. Thank you, I wouldn't completely clear.
Tony?
I'll defer to the board person, I just have several
Okay.
questions I need to ask.
Just one question. I don't know whether Chanel, you said it, or Stephanie, you said it. But there was just kind of an offhand comment that 100 people raised their hand in our district that wanted this service. How'd you get to that number?
I don't know that, but that was actually the number that we were given by parents that raised their hand. I can find out where that came from for you, but.
I'd like to see the data. Was it
Okay.
a survey? Was
Okay.
it, how was that
And where
done?
did you get that information?
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of
Sounded like it was a meeting or something.
yeah, was it a
No, it
public
wasn't a
meeting?
meeting, it's actually inquiries, and so how they receive that information, I think that K-12 needs to respond to that.
Because I'd like to see the inquiry, I'd like to see the market research thing that was sent out, and how you came up with that number.
Okay.
Because that was just kind of threw that out there.
That was actually
I
just
mean-
one of the numbers that I was given for each of the districts that were holding hearings, and that was.
And, if I might ask one other thing, I mean, it looks like it's a kind of a planned marketing strategy, because my understanding is you're going to 18 to 20 schools within this area, and you're kind of bombarding the area all at once. How did you pick this time, and how did you pick the districts? And is this being done across the whole state, or just to the Fox Valley?
Right now, it's just Fox Valley.
Right now? Okay,
Right.
so you're going to take it statewide?
Well, you know what, let's take it one step at a time. I think Fox Valley and 18 districts is probably gonna be enough, right, at this point.
I can't determine that, I don't know.
Right.
I
And
just,
don't
I just
either.
learned about this a month ago.
But no, there are no plans to do that.
Okay.
We're just planning on the one charter, okay? So we're not looking at,
Okay.
steamrolling this across the state, no, not at all. It comes from basically, how do we decide this? You know, if you look at the policy, Illinois Policy Institute, right?
Mhm.
And the data that comes out of there, that it basically talks about if downstate and suburban families lack alternatives. So the data on that I actually have. I'll give you a copy of it. I have a couple copies, and I'll leave that with you.
We can make copies.
Uh-huh. And what it states is, it actually talks about, there's a waiting list of students in certain areas that actually already have charters of who, and actually I just have,
That's all right, we can make copies of it.
okay, let me just give you that one and I'll give this one to you.
That's fine.
And if you look on, gosh, if you look at this, it actually looks at, go to page 3 of 8. I'm sorry, I didn't bring enough copies for
That's
everyone.
okay.
We'll make copies.
Okay.
We'll make copies.
But if you look at there, the charter school, it names the charter school, the year it opened, the grade served, the student school population, and the wait list. So when you look at the map, and I think they have some maps here as well,
Are those chartered schools or virtual chartered schools?
charter.
Okay, how many of those are virtual chartered schools?
I don't think there is any, I think we're the first one,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And if you look at Illinois versus Indiana on page 6 to 8, it shows you the mapping of where the charters are currently, right? Where they are in Indiana versus Illinois, Illinois versus Wisconsin. So if you look at the area, we kind of looked at the Fox Valley area, it's about 259,000 students. So we looked at that population to see if there's enough actually there to actually be viable in terms of means of a charter school. So we looked at about 600 to 1,300 students for virtual
Now,
charter.
just for clarification though, is this virtual versus charter, or is it?
No, I'm just saying charter schools in
Is it
general.
just charter schools in
Yeah,
general?
yeah.
I just
So-
want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, not apples to
Yeah,
oranges.
she
No.
said there were no virtual charter schools on there yet.
Right, so here's another copy if you want it, but I was just
Nope,
giving you
appreciate
the, okay?
Mr. Figueroa,
Thank you. I'm just gonna jump around a little bit, this is based
Sure.
on. Getting back to some of the financial components in your proposal, that I know is very important to the board. You talk about in your proposal school governance, and you delineate administrative and oversight.
Hey, Tony, I'm sorry, you gotta speak up a little
I'm
bit,
sorry.
buddy. No, that's all right.
In your proposal, you talk about school governance,
Thank you.
you talk about administrative and oversight costs, and it increases $600,000 per year. Could you give us an assessment as to what administrative and oversight costs entail, and why you're projecting that they'll increase $600,000 per year.
So, administrative services to the school include obviously the head of school, principals, all of those folks who would be administrative in nature over the school. I don't know about the 600,000 increase other than potential increase in enrollment, but I can find out about that for you.
Okay, if you can provide that information
Okay.
to us, and if it would be helpful, if we can have all this requested information by April 1,
Okay, sure.
sent to the superintendent.
So is there any way we can kind of collect the questions that you have so that we can kind of give how is K-12 going to give the questions that you have so they can respond to all of them and give you everything that you're requesting?
I mean, I have a list, I just want to make sure we get everything.
We'll provide a compilation of questions.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And just to clarify, I said April 19th, we would be voting on April 16th.
Okay.
Well, April 1st will give you enough time. to-
April 1st would be good.
Okay.
Do you anticipate that the state will allow the transition impact aid to be sent to virtual schools for this endeavor? Do you have had communications now with the state on this as far as any transition impact aid fees?
No.
Do you have a notion as whether you're going to use the grant money for startup costs for this venture?
Yes.
What type of grant monies are you anticipate, or have you received, or have you applied?
We haven't really received any yet, but we're going to be applying for.
Do you know how many grants you're applying at this point?
We haven't really, I can't give you an exact number, but I do know that at least 2 or 3 have been identified at this point.
Could you give us that information, possibly?
Yes.
And as a follow-up to that, are those, once you apply, if you meet certain criteria, then it's automatically given, or is there a what-if? Is this one of those things we could approve and then not have enough funding for?
You know what? I have to get back to you on that,
Okay.
give you the specific detail on that. I don't want to say something and somebody write that down.
Well,
and say,
grants
"Yeah,
are
you said."
iffy, you know,
And I know
especially
about
with
grant funding.
sequestration and all that stuff. I mean, things are
Yes.
changing.
I know well about grant funding.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want
But
to
the
make
issue
sure.
would be then, for whatever reason, there might not be enough capital to actually start this, potentially, or that's still a possibility.
So I will give you that exact
Okay,
information.
thank you.
Have any K-12 charters been revoked in this state or other states?
I do not believe so, no.
Not in this state.
In other states?
I believe so.
Can you give us the definitive
You want,
answers?
you want a verification on that?
Yes, if you
Okay.
could verify that, that would be extremely helpful.
Okay.
Going back to the needs of the students in District 428, do you have any type of data or information you can share with the district that the district is not meeting the needs of its students? In other words, going back to Board President Matia's comments, how was it evaluated, or did you use any type of data to show or to give you some indication that District 428, is not meeting the needs of its students?
Please.
So actually, that's not the purpose of the school. The purpose of the school is educational options and choices for families. So not all students fit in one educational model. Students don't all fit in an online model, as they don't all fit in a traditional brick and mortar. So it's not about things that you guys are not doing by any means, right? You're doing great things. School districts do great things for kids all the time, but it's just offering another option to families.
So we didn't gather that data to say what, in terms of where you were not meeting students' needs. We looked at this as an opportunity for those people who actually sent those requests and wanting to know more about virtual education.
Do you contemplate that you will return any unspent funds in terms of if you do receive grants or the allocation of the general state aid? If you have any unspent funds, you anticipate you would return them to the district?
Returning to,
District 428.
we haven't even, I can't tell you that right now.
Have you done that with other school districts that you've operated?
I've only operated, this is my first in terms of being board president, so I haven't operated in other schools.
I don't
How
know.
about K-12? Well, if you have operating costs versus the revenues, what if your revenues exceed your operating costs and your margins that you
Well, that money belongs to the school, right, and the board, obviously, to govern over, and so after K-12 has its management fee taken out, its technology fee taken out, that money belongs to the school, so it doesn't go to K-12.
But have you returned those type of funds or excess of funds to other schools that you've dealt with in other states?
I'm gonna guess no, I can find out the answer to that, but.
Sure.
Because they're management and they're not the governance piece of that and the financial aspect of that, of course, up to the finances, up to the governing board. That's not something that they would do, actually. And how that operates in other states, she's gonna have to tell you, because I'm new to this board. Okay.
You know, typically we do, obviously, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know the process in Illinois for payment. I know, in Michigan, obviously, we don't get paid until October, so we have costs building up from July to October that we need to pay bills for. So typically, if we have a surplus at the end of that fiscal year, we use it to do our startup costs for the next year. So, I will find out if that's happened in any other states, but I don't think so. Okay.
As far as I know in Chicago, I mean, you get surplus funds, you roll it over, right? Depending on what the funding is. If it's grant funding, obviously they have certain requirements and guidelines in terms of how you spend that funding. So it depends if it's grant funding or if it's state aid money, whatever it is. You have to follow the process.
Have you contacted other management companies? I mean, there is an intent here, it sounds like it's a manifested intent to contract with K-12. But as we know, sometimes those things don't happen. So as a consequence, do you have any backup plan? Do you have other options?
Yes.
That if you cannot reach agreement with K-12, can you share with us what other options are?
I can get that information back to you. I don't want to say that without, in terms of talking to the board and gathering that information, and I can provide that to you, but yes.
Are you gonna, is it contemplating gonna charge any fees to the students in terms of
No.
computer use, internet use, any of
No
that?
fees. No tuition, no fees. I can be definitive on that.
I don't have any further questions.
Miss?
I have a follow-up to Tony's question about the alternative option if you were not to contract with K-12. So where K-12 here has administrative oversight fees gathering at $600,000 per year, if you were to contract with another entity, we would have to review an entirely different proposal?
Of course. And keep in mind that's estimated. That has not been finalized in any way, shape, or form, but to give you an average, an estimate, an idea.
Typically, as the authorizing district, obviously you would look at the board's proposal, but you would also have input into that service agreement that was negotiated between whoever the management company of the school is and the board.
Okay, so that brings up another question. If there's negotiations to be made, they make them with virtual learning and not with K-12. But this proposal is based on discussions between K-12 and virtual learning.
Their proposal, right, that is the virtual learning
Yes.
solutions proposal.
But it's an estimated cost.
Okay, and it's not based on the service agreement that's in the proposal?
There's no service agreement currently.
There's nothing in place right now.
Okay, but the one that's included here is just
Estimated.
Michael?
I guess I'm confused a little bit. We've got the virtual academy, which is nonprofit. We've got K-12, which is for-profit. There's management fee, there's technology fee. Which really came first? Was it the virtual charter school went to K-12 and said, hey, we want to partner with you? Or did K-12 go out looking for somebody to create a charter school?
We we actually contacted K-12. And in terms of not partnering with them, talking about consulting service, actually identifying them as providing services.
So as a school district, we have to go out and do requests for proposals, and we accept a number of different proposals that come in. Did you do the same, or did you just contact one company?
I know we know the lay of the land out there. We've actually done some research on that, and so this is the provider that we were wanting to work with.
So you
Based
did it
upon-
based upon your experience.
My experience and the board members as well.
How do you know that their costs are appropriate and reasonable compared to what the other competitors are doing?
Actually, it's estimated cost, we've never been in final negotiations with K-12 as well as other providers. You really don't know what those costs are until you get to the bottom line, right? But looking at them, you identify what specifications you need to have in place. What are the things you need to have in place to ensure success? And so that is like looking request for proposal and the specs, the requirements, the things that you must have, right? And you look at that to identify what your provider is going to be. Who are you going to contract those services with? Who meets those requirements?
And how do you hold them accountable? Because you're using their curriculum.
We're using their curriculum, but keep in mind there's a variety of other curriculum that integrates into their solution. So I also looked at the fact that they have Compass Learning, Odyssey, Headsprout, they have Reading A to Z. So I'm looking at Scantron Performance Series, we're looking at, Study Island, Discovery Education, all of those components that actually you as a school district look at in terms of actually supplemental curriculum or textbooks.
And how do you hold them
Accountable. It's in terms of progress monitoring, on the assessments. How are students achieving? What is the growth? What's the growth, the measurement of growth, yes.
Typically, the board will work with its authorizer to say, here are the outcomes that we want to see achieved, and that is the administration of the school's responsibility to meet those. Those are the outcomes that are measured by the board.
and they're based upon growth as opposed to actual scores?
Is whatever the board wants to see. So typically, there's an academic achievement component, there's a fiscal component, they have their outcomes that they want to see and that they will measure against.
So that still has to be finally determined. So if you were to approve it, we would be working together to define what those outcomes would be.
I guess I struggle a little bit because we keep talking about, well, we haven't negotiated that, or it's to be determined. We have to make a decision as a board here
Right.
on April 16th, but
Right.
yet I'm hearing a lot of, we haven't negotiated those kind of things.
Well, at this point, we don't know who the authorizer is going to be, do we? So not until we get to that point will we identify exactly if you're going to be working very closely with us to identify what those outcomes are, right? If it's not you, and if we go to the charter commission, they could potentially be the authorizer. So it just depends on who that is. And at this point, I can't tell you who that's going to be.
So if we disagree with what you ended up with, can we back out at that point?
You can approve, deny, or defer to the commission. So those are the three options that you have in front of you.
And that's on April 16th?
Yes.
Okay.
So it comes back to that mandate, Michael. The state will ultimately tell us whether we have to do this or not.
Yes.
I would just like to correct that at this point, this proposal is to this board as the authorizer. And unless they agree to combine with other school districts, they alone decide yes or no. The option to defer enters in if they were deciding this with other school districts. So at this point, this board is presented with a yes or no question.
Yes, no, or defer.
No, because they are not considering this in conjunction with other school districts.
Okay.
They alone
I get you.
are
Okay.
considering.
I get you.
So it's a straight yes or no vote.
Yes.
Forgive me, but I'm gonna have to ask your name, and you obviously know something about this, so.
She's with Tony's friend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I'm sorry, I keep saying this, I know we're introduced, but I forgot your name.
And I'm here with Tony Figueroa.
What's your name again?
Yashika Simpkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry. Didn't have a name tag on,
No problem.
Tony does.
Yeah, my
Other comments? Because if not, we're going to move into our public comment part of the meeting. And what we will do, we have one card filled out, but if other people would like to make a comment to the board and ask us questions that we can then ask them, we will do that tonight. So your input and your questions can be heard. And then we don't want to create an open dialogue and have this go on forever, but we would document your questions and then have that presented to Chanel and Stephanie, so they can present that to us by April 1st. So the first card that we do have is from Jenny Amrad. I'm sorry, Jenny. And Jenny is co-president of the DeKalb Classroom Teachers Association. Jenny. And also, I'm just going to remind everyone, as we always do, I'm going to read our little thing here. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete the request card. We're going to waive that tonight for this particular issue. Prior to the meeting, this section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. It should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. Jenny.
Okay. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the 400-plus members of the DeKalb Teachers Union to make you aware of serious concerns we have over the possibility of the K-12 corporation opening a virtual school that could serve the students of the DeKalb School District. I understand that you are the corporation and you're hiring them, but the use of the K-12 group. This for-profit corporation seeks to serve students through an online model that it has been shown in Illinois and in other states to not produce the results they claim to be able to produce. Take, for example, the Chicago Virtual Charter School that was mentioned earlier, which is also run by the K-12 Corporation here in Illinois. According to the data reporting tool on the Illinois Network of Charter Schools website, in 2012, this school boasted an average ACT score of 18. However, only 34 out of 898 enrolled students actually took the test. As you know, at DeKalb, 95% of students were tested, and the average composite score at DeKalb was 20.7. Additionally, in 2012, Chicago Virtual Charter School listed their graduation rate as 42%, seriously and significantly below our own graduation rate as well as the state average graduation rate. We are aware of many other issues that raise grave concerns over the company who's petitioning you today, including lack of licensed quality teaching staff, excessively high student-to-teacher ratio, high turnover rates, millions spent on advertising, practices connected to standardized testing, which would eliminate all students involved in the program from taking the tests. Outsourcing educational work to India. There was a report that we found where they were sending English papers to be graded. I don't know if that's been fixed, but that's actually something that was reported to have happened. And also questions which came up earlier about compliance with special education laws. In DeKalb, we have incredible students who deserve the very best that we can offer them. The schools, programs, and teachers of DeKalb work tirelessly to find ways to reach each and every student in order to prepare them for college, career, or workforce readiness. Take a breath. Some students struggle with traditional programs, and some fit right in. We are constantly looking to new ways, new approaches, and new strategies to ensure that all our students get what they need to succeed. You all are aware, I'm sure, of programs like Ombudsman, which is a computer-based program for kids in our district, and Apex, for credit recovery for some of the kids. Kids who have been suspended, we have partnerships with YSB so that they will go to school during the day and not just be sitting at home. We have extended day in the middle schools for kids who need math tutoring. So we have a lot of programs. And then for gifted, I was listening for kids who are not, who are struggling. We also, for gifted, we have partnerships with the junior college where we have the engineering program that we've put together where kids are getting dual credit, both for high school and for college credit. So we do work for kids to provide, at least 12, if not more, AP classes already at the high school. By working together in DeKalb, we can and will continue to provide a sound education and solid opportunities for our students. We know that in the best interests of our students, we will continue to work together to analyze results and refine our programs and develop new ones so that we meet their needs. Bringing in an outside for-profit corporation with poor results is not only unnecessary, but we feel it would be a poor choice for the students of our great community. We urge you to consider these issues and to explore in depth the concerns that we have raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. again, I said that even if you didn't fill out a card, if the gentleman back there, you'd raise your hand, you could just introduce yourself and,
I apologize for not filling out.
that's okay, that's okay.
Didn't know the procedure. And I don't normally attend board meetings, I'm here for an entirely different purpose. And those of you who know me, doesn't matter, I can't show up anyway. So, a couple of things.
Sir, could you just state your name,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, yes, I'm Frederick Schwantes. I'm here on NIU matter, as a matter of fact. One of the, general comment about distance or online learning. I very much appreciate hearing from the visitors today to DeKalb School District. Virtual or online learning is undoubtedly going to be an important and significant part of the future of education at all levels. However, as long as it's early in the game. It's extremely early in the game. I can't emphasize to the board enough how early in the game and how unexplored some of the concepts are and the procedures and processes that have been described here are. Hence, the answers to the questions, well, we're still checking that out. We're still exploring that. We don't know. We've looked at some data. Well, we don't have a lot of data. Illustrates strongly how early in the game this is. One of the things, young lady, that you mentioned that was so important that you were looking for in terms of the Chicago was the idea of a blended education. And as we move towards the future with online learning, we're going to be looking at a blended type of education. I want the board, so I'm just making a few observations to the board, actually 3. And if you're on board for a long time, these are the things that I would ask you to consider and look for. I want you to keep blended learning as a phrase or a concept in mind. And there are 2 sorts of blended learning, both of which are important. One of them has to do with blended learning within a subject. For example, you were talking about science, remember, chem, bio, phys. There is blended learning within a subject where much material is presented online, but students gather to a brick and mortar on occasion. It's not, hello, how are you at the beginning? It's, hello, how are you for a cake and celebration in the middle, and we're celebrating at the end. It is maybe once every other week, or at least once every 3rd week, where they gather together in a brick and mortar place for maybe 3 hours at a meeting. That's for a given subject. That's blended learning. And blended learning combined face-to-face with online is certainly going to be a direction that is pursued. In addition to within subject, there is within curriculum. What's been presented here is within curriculum, where a student is either here, brick and mortar, or here, online. There is this, where some of the subjects the student attends brick and mortar, for example, DeKalb High School, but for some of the subjects, the student is referred actually, or I'm not get into refer yet, actually is taking the course online. So a student may be taking courses A and B, AP something, or a special ed course online, and many other courses in the brick and mortar place. So that's the second idea of blended. Both of which you should keep in mind, and both of which you should ask about. And when you're collecting or looking at data from online,
1 more minute, please, sir.
yeah, for online schools, you should be asking yourselves, not only is this virtual or charter, but if virtual, how much blended and how much unblended? Because that's going to impact the data that you're looking at enormously, just as you said. And you're quite right. And if it's all online and not blended, you want to be skeptical. At this point in the development of online curriculum, the last point, in my remaining 25 seconds, is that one of the directions this is going to go to, and you hit it right on the head, Mr. Williams, is it? Is that districts optimally would like, and you should want this at this point in the development of this idea, to be a referral, to have the option to refer students either for all or for some courses to a charter school or to a school that's doing online. Heck, you don't need a middleman. You could do this yourselves if you had the administrative organization, etc. But if you're going to use a middleman, charter school, to do it, what you would want is just what you said. Why didn't you come to us, right? And ask, how shall we do this? We could refer whole students for the whole curriculum, or we could refer, I don't want to cut students in pieces, but half students for part of their curriculum. And I appreciate your time, and I urge you to move on to why I came here.
We're working towards it. Yes, sir.
Dave Radke, 630 Joanne Lane, DeKalb, Illinois. I have two students in the DeKalb School District, one who's profoundly challenged, an autistic student who's transitioning into high school, and another who is probably not challenged enough and gives him grief over Clinton Rosette. So my youngest, I asked him if he wanted to apply to the Math and Science Academy, and he said, "Why, Dad? DeKalb High School has a fantastic music program." You know, I've had conflicts with my district, but it is my district. This is public education funded by taxpayer dollars. And I want to be very clear about this. K-12 Incorporated is a for-profit Wall Street, New York Stock Exchange listed firm whose main purpose is the maximization of profit. It is not the education of children, it's maximization of profit. Now, one thing I didn't notice, one of the schools I didn't notice, and I was kind of surprised. I heard about this kind of last minute. I kind of ran home. I found somebody to watch the kids. I ran over here and I managed to only get about 10 minutes online. But one school that was not mentioned was the Agora Cyber School in Tennessee, which was listed by the New York Times in a major article last year as one of K-12 Incorporated's premier schools, one of their major profit centers. And in Tennessee at this school, 50% of their students were behind their peers in reading, 60%, according to the New York Times, were behind their in grade level, 1/3 did not graduate on time, but the school remained extremely profitable for K-12 Learning Incorporated. I then had a chance to go to the corporate website quickly just to check out, and I want to tell you, I was really impressed by who's running the corporation. The executive chairman is Nate Davis. He is the, get my glasses on here, the former CEO and president of XM Satellite Radio, the former VP at Nextel, and the former chief financial officer at MCI. That one went well, only the CEO went to prison in that one. Currently, but he's supported by the CEO, the chief executive officer, Ron Packard, who was formerly in acquisitions and mergers at Goldman Sachs. Now, unless these gentlemen are experiencing some kind of epiphany and doing penance for their past lives, I suspect that they're probably simply moved on to more profitable sectors. In higher education, what we noticed was the decimation of the student loan program in our country as the for-profits flooded in, took a disproportionate share of the money intended for education of students, and basically after they took the money, left the students high and dry. My perception is some of the same activities are now happening in K-12. All of the profits here for K-12 Incorporated are from taxpayer funds. They're from taxpayer monies. And so what we're asking tonight is for our district to participate in further corporate welfare with no real payoff for our students and for our community. The one question I might have for our visitors is who's funding their activities tonight? This is simultaneously, a meeting tonight is simultaneously going on a hearing in Sycamore. I called a friend to ask, what do you know about this K-12? She said, I can't talk to you, I have to go to a meeting in my community, right? I've talked to others, and as Mr. Ficcarelli will stipulate, I have been in a number of school districts over a long period of time. But having said that, I want to tell you that I am really concerned about this move to attempt to privatize the heart of our education. I don't think you're going to approve this, because I know the other 18 districts where it's happening aren't going to approve this. That's not the plan. The plan is to take this virtual school down to Springfield, where corporate money will flow, in an attempt to get a charter school, virtual charter school for the state, hitting hitting the market. So of course I urge my school board, which, as I said, I've had disagreements with in the past, but the one thing that we have here that I don't see in this proposal, we have real accountability in our public school and our community between our board, between our administrators, between our teachers. Finally, I want to close by talking about Jefferson School. You know, for several years, I received calls from Jefferson School. Do you want to pull your kid out because we haven't met AYP? You know the struggle we went through here to get AYP in some of our schools. And I want to tell you, I've been around a lot of school districts over the last 25 years. And I would put up the staff at Jefferson against any teachers that I've met in 50 to 60 school districts that I've had the opportunity to work in. And I want to tell you, it wasn't the teachers. We had a fine staff there, but they confronted major problems. And I can tell you, the problems they confronted day to day with students that were challenged because of economics and other factors. No virtual program is going to solve the problems of those kids. They need a teacher in the classroom dealing with them day to day.
Thank you, sir. Other comments on this particular issue? Carrie, you going to talk about this issue?
This issue.
Okay.
Alan, I don't know whether to direct the board to ask the question or should I ask the question directly?
We're not going to create a dialogue tonight, so just direct the question to the board and we'll make sure it's part of the written proposal back to us, okay?
I would like the board to ask the K-12 Corporation what their teacher retention rate is. We talked a little about student retention rate. What's the turnover or the teacher retention rate? And I also would like to see all this data on a national, state, and local or regional level. I would like to see that information. I'd also like to see, if we drew a bell curve of student capability, and we looked at one end of the bell curve, one tail, and the other tail, the challenge, let's say, and the over, or the very well-achieving students, where in the bell curve, what slices out of that bell curve tend to be accepted and in this program? And again, on various levels.
Stephanie, Charnel, can we have that type of information?
Yes. What types of students, if you're asking?
Okay.
Yeah, the entire bell curve.
Yes.
Yes, and that's the answer, the entire bell curve. All students are welcome in our school. We have a
We'd like to see the bell curve.
Which
you want to see
students are?
demographics, and this is actually what,
Okay.
what
So
he asked
the-
for was the demographics. Okay, sure. For test scores, but we can give you the demographics of students in our schools as well. Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, with that, yes.
I just wanted to add one more question.
You have your name, please?
My name is Kathy Shabel with the Illinois Federation of Teachers.
Okay.
They're reported on their website, 3 charter schools in the state of Illinois, Chicago Virtual, YCCS school, and a school in School District 300, which is, I believe, Carpentersville. So I'm wondering.
Cambridge Lakes. Cambridge Lakes.
I'm wondering why we're saying there's only one, and if so, what happened to the other 2? Did the authorizer pull out, or were they dropped? Did they not meet the standards of the authorizing district? I don't know.
Can you address that right up front?
You're talking about other charters, right?
No, K-12. On K-12 website, you drop down Illinois, it lists 3 schools, public schools.
I know CVCS.
2 in Chicago.
And YCCS.
Right.
The other district may purchase curriculum from K-12, but not management services. So it's not a K-12 managed school, but they might purchase curriculum from K-12.
So earlier when you said there was just one, you meant there was 2? You said there was just one.
I think I talked about one in the slides, but there's another one that's YCCS affiliated in Desmond, Chicago.
Thank you. All right, we will close our hearing on the virtual academy, and we thank you for coming tonight. And we will look forward to the information by April 1st and send that to Dr. Briscoe, our superintendent.
Okay.
And we will.
Yeah, you'll be sending questions to
Dr.
Mr. Jackson.
We'll get it. We'll coordinate the questions and we'll get them to you.
Okay, that was great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the rest of the public comments. The same rules apply. Mark, if you could, we'll wait till the people exit so we can hear you. Mark, Barwagon?
Barwagon, yeah.
Good, okay. And for those people who may not know me, I teach art at Huntley Middle School. I've been there longer than I can remember. But if you don't know, if you're not familiar with the two middle schools, every week we do an advisory session with the kids and try to teach them things that they should know just as a solid citizen growing up. And today's lesson happened to be on rumors. And that's essentially why I'm here tonight, because at the last FFAC meeting, there was a draft of a schedule pertaining to the middle schools that was put out there on the table that, for all practical purposes, in the desire to gain math minutes would subtract arts, computers, and general music from the curriculum. And so I was just here tonight to encourage you to be alerted to that and to say that I and some other people that are here tonight don't believe that's the right way to go. We certainly do agree that math is important, but to subtract those other areas would not be, I think, a viable solution. So that's basically okay. what Thank you, Mark. Carrie, on another issue.
Yes, thank you, Tim. First, I apologize. I intended to have this to the board in paper, and I just didn't get it done. But let me make my comment. This is regarding the NIU rental agreement for the theater area in Huntley, the old high school, now the middle school. First, I'm really glad that you guys, the administration and the board and the community are considering this. I think it's great when NIU or any other entity can collaborate with the school district and we can share resources. It would be a revenue stream of a small amount, but nonetheless not insignificant. So I think that's all great. But I do have, after looking at the back of the material, at least in particular, a couple of questions or concerns that I want to share with the board. One, very cut and dried, I think the insurance limits are low. The insurance called out by the lease is $1 million in individual and $2 million aggregate. That's not very different than some homeowner policies. When you have an auditorium full of people and people moving in and out, moving props and all that, I could foresee potential accident that would be well beyond the cost of that $1 million or $2 million. So I would ask you to consider possibly increasing those limits. I don't know exactly how it interfaces with the district's policies and so on, but I'm sure that you know and can find out. So that's one concern. The lease also calls for a criminal background check on people that would be coming and using the facility. I want to point out that at NIU and in a lot of state universities and other universities, some of the kids, when they have incidents or troubles, are referred to an internal judicial system. Okay, it's recently been renamed to, where is it? The Office of Community Standards and Student Conduct. All right, so when you consider a background check, a criminal background check, you might also want to ask the university about whether any student involved in this or staff member has been referred to their internal judicial review system. You might find out some things that you otherwise wouldn't find out through a criminal background check. And then there's the section in the lease that talks about illegal or, quote, immoral activity. Being a middle school, it's a little different in my mind than a high school. If we leased out our high school facility, I'd be much less concerned. But what sorts of plays or activities would be happening at this building, at this middle school building, and would those plays and activities and so on fit well, be appropriate, if you will, with a middle school setting? If there were advertising for a play, for instance, you know, what's the name of the play? What does the play involve? Is there any question about whether or not that's an appropriate thing at that location? And I think the word immoral, although it's in the lease, is very hard to define. One last thing, I saw the word fireproofed. I'm not sure, I saw that in the earlier version of the back of the material. I'm not sure if it's still in the lease. Fireproofed for stage items, props, and so on. Again, that's another issue that may be hard to define, and I'm sure the insurance companies and the city code officers will be interested in what does that mean exactly, and does it impact the district's responsibility, liability of what is fireproof. So, thank you very much. Those are my questions and concerns.
Thank you.
Consider.
Appreciate that, Gary. Okay, that covers our public comments. We'll now move on to our non-business consent agenda. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through C.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Nina Fontana,
Yes.
Michael Lord,
Yes.
Jessica Lyons,
Yes.
Tom Mattia,
Yes.
Mike Burbett,
Yes.
Tracy Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes. Business consent agenda. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve business consent agenda items A through E. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Carrie brought up a couple interesting.
Yeah,
things.
I was gonna say, Tammy? I think we'd like to probably address those, because I think they were good, valid points.
All right. Let's see if I can remember them.
Liability, we have district.
The liability that was
Liability.
listed is the standard insurance that we require in all of our facility rentals, no matter what size group we have in. It's what we've had in place since day one at New Hampshire. That's all I can share at this point.
District has its own liability in addition to
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Right.
This is just
Risk,
from
high risk of
the liability from the renter's perspective is the $1 million and $2 million aggregate for that estate.
Do you know if they have to actually go out and buy a specific policy for this, or is it covered under something else that NIU has?
My understanding with whether it's NIU or any group, it's an actual separate certificate that is provided to us that spells us out, and we are listed, the DeKalb School District is listed as a certificate holder.
Yeah, I kind of get that. I'm just wondering if they have to actually go out and specifically pay dollars
Additional
for
premiums.
something like this, or whether they've already got something that's covered at a much higher level, and we just said, well, we want $1.2 million, where they actually could say, well, we've got much more than that,
Sure.
and we'd be willing to just continue with that at the higher levels.
Possibly NIU could speak of this. I would make the assumption, being NIU, that they have higher levels. Some of these smaller clubs that are coming in, they're gonna go by the 1 and the 2 requirement, and that's all they're gonna have in other rentals.
This was specifically gotten for this lease by our compliance administration office, and we provided the certificate to Tammy already. So it's already in the works to be in place so that it's ready to go. So it wasn't something we already had in place.
But I think the question is, if we had requested a higher level, would you be able to do that through your university as well? We just have to get a certificate reissued with that higher rate.
More than likely, yes. That is not my particular area of expertise. We can investigate that further and, if need be, provide an amendment to the lease with that information.
Okay.
Background check.
Yeah, why don't we pull, let's redo the motion so we can pull out item B, okay? So, how do we do this, Ricky? Do we want to amend it? What's that? Just vote this down.
Items A through D.
You can amend it.
Let's amend the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, would someone like to amend it for A through D?
I'd like to amend the motion
Okay.
that we approve items A, B, C, and D, and that we separate item E.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Could we have roll call, please?
Michael Lord,
Yes.
Jessica Lyons,
Yes.
Tom Mattia,
Yes.
Mike Burbett,
Yes.
Tracy Williams,
Yes.
Nina Fontana.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to item E.
We can make a motion to approve it pending increased liability and insurances and background checks for.
Can you define the morals, the types of play?
I didn't see that. I'm looking through the lease right now. I just want to.
I just think it says there's nothing that can be immoral.
Illegal or immoral.
Illegal or immoral.
Is that in the exhibit, Tammy?
I'm not
Whereabouts in
confident.
the lease did you see?
It's in the lease, in the middle part of the lease is on the call. Sorry, I didn't bring it
I'd have to
up.
find it, sorry.
I've looked at it twice
We
online.
should say pending district.
I cannot specifically legally define immoral for you, but we can address that again in an amendment, definitely.
Okay, well, I think what we- I think
There
what-
is a bit of vagueness to
I think Dr. Briscoe had a good suggestion.
Yeah, well, there were 4 things Carrie brought up, and what I would suggest tonight is that that the board would approve this pending our thorough review of Carrie, a thorough review of the modifications we discussed before any signature would be on it, or we could just bring it back if that would work at the April 16th meeting. That way we can take care of all these issues. Would that work?
Well, we're trying to start some construction on the Stevens building, so we would like to get it in place, and I see no problem with any of the questions raised in writing an amendment. Those are perfectly agreeable situations. What I would prefer to see is to go ahead with it and then immediately do an amendment to that lease that addresses all your issues.
I will say, in working with NIU on this contract, anything we've brought to their attention that we have recommended changes on, they have been more than willing to work with us on any of those changes.
Mike, we ready to work?
Make a motion that we approve item E, subject to additional review by the superintendent's office.
The only piece that I cannot guarantee is the information about the student judicial review, but what I can say is that we will perform background checks, that the students will always be supervised by a graduate assistant or professor.
We'll work on it, and we'll bring those modifications that we're going to include in the agreement to them. I'll make sure the board sees those.
Okay.
Okay?
Just a point of clarification. So I know we have a number of student teachers that come through our district, and some are coming from NIU. I think we need to be somewhat consistent with how we do it across the board.
Right.
If we're not asking this for our student teachers that are actually in the classroom with our students, then we probably shouldn't be asking this from people that are going to be there after the students are gone.
But it's something that we should
Yes,
probably
but we should
consider
at
as
least
a
address
total
it.
policy.
Yeah.
By the way, have you met Carrie Malott of Hinshaw Law?
Not even.
So Michael's made the motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jessica Lyons? Pardon?
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Mike Burbick?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Michael Lord?
Yes.
Motion carries. Any further review by Superintendent Briscoe?
Tom, we still need to do A through D. We approved my motion to.
No, I think we.
We voted.
Oh,
on
you
that.
approved
No, we never
accept.
No, you
We just did
voted.
A through D.
You just voted to pull it.
We just what?
You just voted to pull out E, you didn't vote.
Fine.
Okay.
Approved A
All right,
through D.
so can we have a motion to approve A through D?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mike. Any discussion? Roll call?
Mike Burbick?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Michael Lord?
Yes.
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes. Thanks for keeping me on track. Business and Finance. Approval of the roof replacement projects at Founders Elementary and Huntley Middle School. This is an action item. Tammy, we have some bids.
We did. We went out to bid with the base bid at Huntley Middle School, and then 3 alternate bids that included locations at 2 at Founders, and then a skylight replacement at Huntley Middle School. Once we identified that, once we start dealing with skylights, we may have some issues around them. So we have an alternate bid for the skylights. With this project, we originally estimated that this project before the skylights was going to come in at approximately $804,000. If you recall, we're looking to use life safety funds from 2012-13 as well as 2013-14. And as we do need to catch up on some of these roof replacement projects. Based on this, we are coming in under budget for a project alone by $75,000, but when you do add in the contingency dollars of 5% and the architectural fees of 8%, it does put it over budget by just under $54,000. We do have that money available through our O&M budget for 2013 and 14, and because these roofs are so critical to move forward on replacing, we are recommending that we move forward with the bids, approving the base as well as alternates 1, 2, and 3.
Questions for Tammy? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Casey Williams? Oh, he's gone.
He's in the restroom.
Okay. Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Michael Ward?
Yes.
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Mike Burbach?
Yes.
Motion passes. Possible approval of relocation and construction of the secured main entrance at Little John Elementary. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the administration to prepare bid specifications and seek bids for the renovation and relocation of the Little John main entrance, main office areas, and nurse's office. Tammy, I know this was discussed at FFAC, and we are bringing it for an action item to go out and get the bids. We still have to approve those. Your comments?
This was brought up, we have actually, through FFAC, there is a subcommittee that has been developed to look at the facility projects that are, that were being proposed and using of construction grant funds. And through this committee that met, we recommended to the FFAC committee to look at our priority items, recommendations, which include the safety and security projects. As you may remember, we are moving forward with the Jefferson Elementary secured entrance. I should say we're out to bid for that, assuming bids come in within budget. We'll be moving forward with that after the April 16th meeting, as well as doing a secure main entrance at Lincoln Elementary, but that is a smaller project to be handled in-house by our staff, and we didn't have to go out to bid for that. When looking at the priority items in our subcommittee, we felt that it was important to not hold off another year on doing the secure entrances at Little John and at Malta. We had received preliminary drawings, so we had estimates on what these projects were going to cost, but it had not gone any further. Little John, we actually had been looking at for at least 2 years, I believe. We've been considering that project, but because of the scope of the project, it had been delayed at previous years. The subcommittee recommended FFAC last week that we move forward and approve using construction grant money to fund these 2 projects for construction or going out to bid in construction for the summer of 2013. Obviously, we're on a tight timetable because of going out to bid and what that means for turnaround and starting construction immediately upon school ending. And because these projects are even more significant than Jefferson, because of the relocation involved in both of these, it's going to even still be a tight construction schedule in the 2 and 11 weeks that we are out of school this summer. So based on that, FFAC did agree with our subcommittee's recommendation and is bringing this to the board that we move forward with going out to bid on the Little John and subsequently the Malta project that are both in front of you.
Questions, Tammy?
So this is solely coming from the grant money that we received from the state?
Yes, it is.
This is not coming out of budgets?
Absolutely. It's coming through the construction grant. These are the first 2 items, I believe, that the committee has considered for approval.
This will be the first items that we spent from them.
And by the way, Kareem Malatif, inshallah, is chair of that subcommittee. Actually, it's a fabulous subcommittee. It's Tammy, Andrea, Carrie, Brad Brown. I mean, it's a great group. I know they are truly vetting out, our options and what to do with it.
So it's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the administration to prepare seek bids, renovation, for Little John main entrance, main office areas, and nurse's office. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Michael Ward?
Yes.
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Mike Burbach?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes. We will deal with the Malta issue separately. It's been recommended that the Board of Education approve the administration to prepare bid specs and seek bids for the renovation and relocation of the Malta main entrance, main office areas, and nurse's office. Do we hear a motion for that?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Tammy?
May I bring up one other point
Yes.
on both of these projects? Obviously, one project that is being put on hold at this point for the last building that does not have a secure entrance is Tyler Elementary. And I do want the board to understand that we have put significant thought into, do we move forward or do we not move forward with this? But due to the pending discussions in regards to the early childhood and pre-K program, Cheeseborough's role in this, Tyler's role in the future, and the undetermined, future plans of that building,
and acknowledging that there are other significant issues that need to be addressed in that building, since we currently do not have doors on all the classrooms and walls that go up all the way up to the ceiling. We realize that Tyler needs to be looked at in its entirety, not just stick a main entrance somewhere and hope it works with the final plan that comes up in a year, hopefully, year, 2 years, whatever it is. So we consciously have made the effort to not move forward with a recommendation on Tyler at this point, pending whatever that final plan is, and then incorporate it into the final redesign.
And also, in talking to Kerry offline prior to the meeting, he stated that, you know, there are some discussions possibly about doing some further renovations to Malta Elementary, but that this would not preclude those things from happening down the road, because I think they thought it out very well. So it's not like something that we had to change if we decided to do some additional things out there. So that was reassuring to hear that. Any other questions for Tammy? Roll call.
Michael Lord?
Yes.
Jessica Lyons?
Yes.
Tom Mattia?
Yes.
Mike Burbick?
Yes.
Tracy Williams?
Yes.
Nina Fontana?
Yes.
Motion passes. Agenda building. I just noticed from reading the notes at the last meeting, we talked about Jessica, the report card. I think Dr. Moeller said that's going to be presented at the April 19th meeting. The report card?
The data on CBMs.
Yeah, the RCBM data was going to be,
Okay.
we have that in
Good.
April 16th.
Jessica, I saw that you suggested that. Any other items? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Pretty good. That might be a record, huh?
Yeah, I know that's for sure.
He's getting all great.
It's 2 years.
It was my plan. I brought it up and your meeting, and follow up with
All those that
earlier.
All right,
One way or the
Oh, up to the cold.
Thanks, Carrie.
I'm sorry, I just did all that info and I used to get you guys earlier. I didn't like to. Yeah. I got caught up in
Someday we'll get you to circulate petitions and keep your seat warm here.
Yeah, well, if my situation was different at home,
Yeah.
then I probably would have run. It's too tenuous, and I don't want to sign up for a 4-year stint if I can't follow through. And I just don't know. But I try to do what I can.
Yeah, no, I have huge concerns over the Office of an Academic Community and Student Conduct. It's been a part of my platform, talking with Chief Lowry, that those cases are not investigated like they should be. You could have drug possession for drug possession.
Exactly.
And that they could be getting it from the same
I was waiting for you to chime in.
source,
on the,
but yet it's dropped. And now the number of verbal infractions that are used on campus for criminal offenses, whether they're drug possession,
No, that was from the last meeting.
detainer,
so I think,
it's gotta stop.
I think we're good.
And I know that the university's worried about perception.
Absolutely. Well, not just perception, clear reaction. That's why they have, that's why most universities have an in-house system. If they can avoid sending it outside, then maybe they will avoid.
But it would do us better to be more assertive with those things than sweeping under the rug. But anyway.
It's so subjective, that's the problem. When you go to in-house and you review it, it's a completely different standard, and I think it's a very good standard. I've never had experience with it, but the court system, you pretty much have a level playing field. Different courts, you have a pretty level playing field, but when you go to an in-house system, one university is very different from another, or maybe they have an attorney, that's hard, saying this is different from year to year, the attorneys are different, so
you or I with the possession of drugs on campus, what would happen to us?
we get busted.
Right.
I'm not sure, Mike, but I think that I've been watching the Star. Seems like I see four. Transported to the county.
Yeah.
You know, or was researched to seems to me there might be some of those that might just hear my that's always.
how's Hawaii?
Campus.
That was a quick trip. Wasn't it?
It wasn't that big of a trip, but you never even tried.
That there's that whole college students and college students.